warriors of legend. Hallowed and venerated among the stars themselves. For those bold enough to join this gladiators' pantheon, this gallery of champions, there is only one rule that matters. Winner stays on.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the opening salvo of Alliance Tournament 19. 19, can you believe it? This one is sponsored by the Gallente Federation. So in Alliance Tournament 19, we will see teams competing for pride, for glory, and of course for prizes. From seeing their Alliance logo emblazoned upon the victor's monument in the system of Monarch, through getting 10 of the incredible new Gallente victory skins for every win they get in both the feeders and the main tournament, to taking home a stash of unique prize ships, the Shapash and the Sibeli. Now today, we start to sort the wheat from the chaff as we enter the feeder rounds. Now, in a change from tournaments past, there is no silent auction for tournament spots this year. No more can you flex the plex and buy your way into the main event. Now, you have to prove yourself in this gauntlet of champions. Fight your way through for the opportunity for EVE immortality. Today, 46 teams enter, and by next weekend, 28 will have secured those spots in the main event. If you win today, that first critical match, you're straight into the tournament. That's right, 24 of those 28 spots will be filled with that all-important first win. If you stumble right now, then you're into an absolutely brutal bracket. You'll have to fight through 3 or 4 more rounds, potentially culminating in the Gallente gamble. But more on that another time. Of course, the 4 teams that don't have to suffer this today are the teams that came top 4 last year in Alliance Tournament 18. They are Truth, Honor, Light, Odin's Call, We Form Volta, and the Tuskers. They get to sit back and see what happens in this exciting opening event. I am CCP Overload, and I am joined on the desk by some wonderful people, by Yuntan and Mystical Might. Misty, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm actually pretty excited to see some of these teams come into the Feeders tournament and see whether they can progress into the main tournament, either in the first round or whether they have to battle through the entire thing to try and get their place in their bracket. So it should be pretty good. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. It's, should be good.
Yeah, we're certainly going to see some historic teams that have always had the ability, the plex, to just buy straight into the main tournament and skip these feeder rounds for the last couple of years. Historical teams like Pandemic Legion, the most winning team in Alliance Tournament history, stumbled in the last couple of years. And of course, they were able to buy their way through with their vast reserves. But now they are here in the trenches with all the other teams who are in the exact same position as them. Yuntan, that's pretty exciting. We're seeing some pretty old school teams going up against some new blood.
Yeah, and obviously we're seeing some teams, in fact, the first 2 teams that we're going to see today, which is Goonswarm Federation and Snuffed Out, are a pair of teams with a long history on Tranquility, having fought each other in the north during the low-sec Voltron era, all the way back in 2016 that led into World War B, up to eventually joining the Imperium during the height of the Rock War age, where they shacked up together and owned their own little pocket of space there, so they could build up the Supercat fleet that they now terrorize low-sec with. So it's 2 of the kind of apex predators, as it were, of their own respective regions, coming up here to find out what they can do when they don't have Sinos on hand.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. I wonder if we'll see 4 Demoses again from Snuffed Out, or whether they're still scarred from that questionable decision last year. But this is a heck of an opening match, Mystical Might, as Jintan says. Goonswarm Federation, #1 marble team in the Alliance Tournament, coming in first in the seeding marble run, going up against Snuffed Out. What do you think about this match?
I think it's going to be interesting for a different reason, actually. For those of you that may have missed it, we did a kind of team pick thing last weekend, I think, where we were deciding which teams we were going to back and who our fantasy team was. And Jintan actually picked Goonswarm, and Wingnut picked Snuff. So not only are Goons and Snuff competing for a place in the tournament, but Jin and Wingnut are now competing for some points. Because I'll let Jin explain it later, perhaps. But yeah, it should be fairly interesting. I think Snuff will probably take it if they don't bring 4 Deimoses again. They did not do well last time, so here's to hoping they've learned that lesson.
Yeah, Jintan, normally we do a bit of a tier list before the main event and before the feeders, but this year you decided to change things up a little bit, essentially bringing fantasy football into the Alliance Tournament world. Fantasy Alliance Tournament feeder rounds. Explain, what was the motivation here?
Basically, just from me being addicted to playing in fantasy football and other various fantasy sports leagues over the years, I decided why not try and bring it to EVE Online. We've always kind of thought about how would you possibly do it. You can't possibly track individual players' performances like you can in a regular team game. So let's just draft all the teams. Let's see who has the best eye for talent, the people who can figure out who those underrated teams are, and all that sort of thing. And at the end of it, we'll figure out which analysts do know their shit and which ones don't.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I mean, maybe we can talk about that at some point, maybe today or tomorrow, and have a look and maybe just a temperature check and see who's off base, who's looking good. I know one of our casters, Mark Resurrectus, Wormhole Daddy, he has been just drafting every Wormhole team he possibly can. One of which already pulled out, unfortunately for him. Singularity Syndicate, unfortunately, could not make the tournament today and have pulled out. I believe also Prismatic Legion, or the other team that have dropped out. So that 48 that was supposed to be for the video has turned into 46, giving a couple of first round buys to a couple of key teams. Now that's great for them because they're able to just scoot straight through. They don't have to worry about trying to win that first match. But I mean, Mystical Might, this is essentially win and in right now. Like this match, every match that we're going to see for the next while is win and in. And if you fail, it is pain. How do you think that's going to make the teams feel?
I'm hoping that teams decide to bring some of their better setups to the first match because it's an almost guaranteed entry, right? If you bring your one of your better setups, not necessarily your best, you want to keep some things back so that when you get into the main tournament, you've not already shown your best hand and people are already working to counter you because there's still time between the feeders and the actual tournament. So anything you show now will be theory crafted or reverse engineered and then practiced against. But I'm hoping people bring their better setups that they think will actually be able to win matches against some of the good teams in the tournament, instead of pretending that perhaps they can scrape by bringing something trash from a few years back.
Jen, you've been in a position of leading teams in the past as well. What's the thought process from a captain's point of view? You know, Misty's saying, bring that good comp right now and get in. If you think that you're a solid team and you're up against a weaker team, like how confident do you think you can be in these positions? Yeah, so I'm being told, Jintan, the stream couldn't hear anything that you said there. I could tell you it was insightful analysis, and honestly, spoilers for the script of this particular tournament. But unfortunately, we don't really have the time to repeat it. So you're going to have to just try and insinuate what Jintan might have talked about there. But honestly, beautiful words, Jintan. But we are ready to go to the arena for our very first match of Alliance Tournament 19. It is Goonswarm Federation. It is Snuffed Out, and your casters are going to be the Basilisk and Chad Flame.
Hello everybody, welcome to, as the guys were saying, this very first match of the Alliance Tournament 19 feeders, and the nerves have got to be high for these two teams. They are the first ones up to the class to give their presentation. Countdown is starting, 30 seconds to go. A little bit ahead of schedule there, so or a little bit behind schedule for us rather. So let's look at these comps here, Chad. Not sure if Chad is having technical issues. I can't hear him. Maybe muted on mix. But in any case, this match is getting underway here. In just 5 seconds now, so these comps, Goonswarm Federation seems to have a gun comp. Yep, you're on here, Chad. Goonswarm bringing a bunch of gun battle cruisers here. Vulture, Navy Ferox, Navy Harbinger, Navy Myrmidon. Snuffed Out bringing a sort of kind of Kingslayer-y, but also kind of control-y comp with these 2 rapid heavy battleships, the Guardian and the 2 Blackbirds. So those Blackbirds are going to be an issue if they can't get dealt with. And we are now seeing the Goonswarm Federation push in here a little bit. This Caracal Navy, the Phantasm, etc. They're all pushing forward a little bit, trying to get into range of these guns here. I think they realize that the Snuff comp they're up against isn't particularly fussed about range. You know, it wants to stay fairly tight and balled up and compact. So they're free to sort of push in and get into optimal range of their guns. But we are seeing Duckslayer take some chunks in the Blackbird here, so it's going to be on Infinitas. Very competent pilot, flew with him in the Captain's Cup on the Jitsu team this year. He's obviously going to be on the ball. He's going to be keeping Duckslayer alive. They're switching on to Minton perhaps, but again, Infinitas probably very capable of, I mean, he's already going to be decycling reps and putting them on him again, so it's going to be difficult to make some progress there. Just checking, Chad, are you still encountering technical difficulties? I assume so. So I'll just keep going. So Nuke Michael in the Barguest is starting to be primary here now. I think perhaps Goons have realized this comp only has these 2 battleships for damage. It's got the Barguest of Nuke Michael, it's got the Armageddon Navy of Joza, and the rest is control. Yep, I heard you there, Chad. Keep going. Come in. Knock, knock, come in. They are actually making progress on Nuke here.
Yeah, this is Alexei of Card here, jumping in for Chad as we see this exciting match playing out between Goonswarm and Snuffed Out. Right now, Snuff's definitely on the back foot, despite on paper having a pretty strong comp.
Yeah, I feel like this comp that they've got here wants to try and land the jams and then try and pick off a primary target that we saw. It's a sort of modified version of a comp that we saw Hydra use multiple times last year. They haven't got the massive damage. They're probably not going to win on like 100-point victory. It's going to be on points if they do win. But obviously these command destroyers, Mankara, Blikasha in the Magus, going into sort of middling armor here. So it's on the Guardian to keep them up. If they lose links, it's going to be very, very dangerous for this comp with the E-Wall that they've got.
Absolutely. Fortunately, their Guardian does seem to be doing a pretty good job. Unfortunately, the ECM doesn't seem to be able to consistently stop the Osprey reps of Podrick Equus, who is continuing to keep the Goonswarm Federation team topped off, despite what I assume is pretty relentless rapid heavy missile fire from that Barguest and Get a Navy. The Get a Navy, crucially, has not seemed to have been able to land any neutralizers on anything. Is it possible he doesn't have them?
I think maybe Snuff haven't actually been. They've been waiting for the jams here. They've been holding out for one of these Blackbirds to get a jam, but they may have said, it's not happening. We need to do something. So I see them pushing forward here, and they are actually pumping into Podrick in the Osprey. He is burning away to try and get out of the missile range. Armageddon Navy doesn't have the best missile range, but he is going into armor now. He's going into hull, and this is a shield Osprey. Obviously, he is going to go down here, and this is going to then put the onus on Goons to make some progress that they haven't been able to do so far. The Guardian of Infinitas has been able to just keep everyone alive. Podrick is still living in half hull. He's just got out of range
hanging in there. Every second that Podrick buys his team is absolutely crucial, because once he goes down, this is a war of attrition, and it's a war Goonswarm will probably not win. So Podrick staying up this long is huge. He's now, he finally dropped. He's finally dropped.
And of course, in this situation, it just means when you're against this double ECM comp with the 2 Blackbirds, that ECM obviously, as the match goes on, it gets more and more concentrated until it comes to a point where you literally just can't play the game. There's just so many jams overlapping. It's only one ship for the time being, but they are still splitting damage between these 2 Blackbirds, giving Infinitas a little bit of trouble, keeping them both up.
Yeah, the ships that are jammed are still going to be able to attack the ship that is jamming them. That's why you're seeing some of the damage split between these Blackbirds. They're still trying to go after that Magus, who is hanging in there pretty strong at about 2/3 armor. Meanwhile, Duckslayer's Blackbird back to full. Infinitas doing some work here, although he himself is now finding himself in danger as he's starting to take some pretty serious damage.
I feel like the play for Goons is, in fact, to kill these Command Destroyers. If they can get the Pontifex and the Magus off the field here, people think, Command Destroyers Tech 2 resist, but they're actually pretty squishy. If you can get them tackled down, these battle cruisers will be able to absolutely pump through them, and they haven't got the raw buffer that the Blackbird's got for the Guardian to catch them. So if you can quickly switch, tackle a Magus, quickly switch onto it, pump it from range, it will die pretty quickly, and it's difficult for the Guardian to keep it up when he's got to decycle his reps and then cycle them on the Magus and wait till the end of that cycle to get the reps in.
Unfortunately, Goonswarm is going to have a hard time getting the critical mass needed to punch through even those destroyer tanks with the Blackbirds doing their jobs here. That said, they seem to be trying to now concentrate on Duck Slayer. I think this is going to be a more successful strategy for them if they can keep enough damage on one of the Blackbirds to push through it. If they can
Yeah, I
get the
think their
one
strat here
down,
is
it
just
becomes
to.
tremendously easier.
I think they just want to sort of pressure Infinitas's cap here. The Guardian only 2 mid slots, so it's not going to be the strongest thing on cap. And it's not really going to have any sort of cap coming from elsewhere in the comp. Maybe a remote cap transfer on the Bargist if he's close by, but obviously they're very short range. That would require him to sit right next to him. They kill off the carries as well. That was probably being quite annoying, but Infinitas in this Guardian is going into Hull here. He doesn't have enough cap to wrap himself and the Blackbirds. They are going to trade for the Harbinger Navy of Lord Jackson, but the Guardian going down is massive. The rest of this comp is just going to fall apart now. Minton goes down in quick succession there in the other Blackbird.
And the Harb Navy is still not dead. This is a terrible trade. Goonswarm has now somehow managed to take this back. They are now in the driver's seat here with a lion's share of damage and tank. These
Yeah,
are
I think
Navy
it
battle
was quite an
cruisers.
intelligent choice from Goonswarm here to just say, if you can shoot the Guardian, and we'll whittle through it. If you're getting jammed by the Blackbird, just shoot that. And it's all adding up into his cap pressure, and now this Snuff comp is just absolutely falling apart. The Sentinel's going to die, the Pontifex is going to die, the Professor's going to die with no reps. It is just going to be these 2 battleships left of the Geddon Navy and the Vargas, and they could prove to be quite a bulky target, but with only 3 minutes left in the match here, just over 3 minutes, I don't know if they're going to be able to break enough stuff. Obviously, there's no Logi on the other side. They can maybe look at the Caracal Navies, the Osprey Navy, but you're getting into a point situation, and when you've lost 8 of the ships in your comp, it's pretty difficult to come out ahead on that metric.
Yep, and unfortunately, this Goonswarm team, the lower end, where you'd think they would try to make up a lot of those points, very kitey. Osprey Navy, Jackdaw, Phantasm, these are very elusive ships, especially for battleship grade damage. They're going to have a hard time getting through those hit points, even though there's not a lot of them on paper. And if they go the other direction against the command ship and the Navy battlecruisers, they might not make it in time.
Yeah, I think the Armageddon Navy has, from memory, 70-kilometer range with faction heavies. It really doesn't have the best range. It doesn't have a range bonus like the Vargas, which makes it very, very easy to stay away from for the Jackdaw, the Caracal Navy. So the Vulture, the Ferox, the Myrmidon Navy, they're all untouched, and they can feel free to just push in and keep putting damage on this Vargas of Newt Michael, who, the Guardian, obviously centerpiece to this comp. If the Logi goes down, everything just falls apart. So he's not really going to have much backing him up here. He is going down into low armor. And this is, in fact, going to be, some might say, a surprise win for Goonswarm. I think many people, this was going to be one of the most interesting matches in the first round, and I think many people would have favored Snuffed out slightly. But Goon's coming out strong here.
Honestly, if you looked at their comps on paper, I think Snuffed Out had the better game plan, but Goonswarm just executed. They hung tough after losing their Logi. They stayed composed, and they managed to turn this match around as this Vargast of Nuke Michael is desperately clinging to life.
Yeah, I think Snuff are
Somehow
going to need some
the
more practice.
Magus
Maybe
of
they.
Vanka is still alive, living to win
Yeah, they're
over
just
there,
choosing to
despite
get rid of
being
the
surrounded
Vargas.
by a cloud of drones.
I think Goonswarm at this point are saying the only way we lose this match is if the Vargas lives and they're able to break through our battle cruisers. So they're just securing the win there. The Magus at this point in the match is just not really doing anything for the team. You can kill him if you want, but killing him doesn't secure the win in the same way that killing the Vargas does. They may take down the Myrmidon Navy, but it's going to be futile as this match draws towards the close here. Just over 1 minute left.
The Phantasm has made it its mission to ensure that Magus does not survive the night. He has put drones and lasers on him, and now finally switched off back onto the Geddon Navy. That Magus has managed to dodge a bullet. Not that it's going to help his team much. He is putting out links to absolutely no one, with just the Geddon Navy left, who is tackled, surrounded by a cloud of hostile drones, desperately trying to do what it can against this Merm Navy, which it has caught. But I don't know if it has the DPS to close the deal here. And even if it does, with 49 seconds remaining in this match, it is not going to turn the tide. This is purely for pride if it can bring down this Merm Navy, now sitting at half structure and dropping fairly rapidly.
Yeah, it's just going to come down to whether he has enough missiles in his clip to deal with the Merm Navy. I think he will. Yeah, the Merm Navy does go down. So let me tell you a story, Alec. Last week, Moderator was on the draft show and he wanted to mend the bridges between Snuff and Jutsu. And then this week on Thursday, we were scrimming and we had to pause for 20 minutes because someone pinged there was a Titan tackled. Long story short, it turned out to be a Snuff bait and they delayed us for 20 minutes. They killed my Panther and my amulets. So screw the bridge. I'm glad that Goons won. Let's go Goons.
Karmic justice here in the opening round of the feeders rounds.
So going forward, Snuff are going to have to play later on today, and I think they may be well advised to sort of bring out a perhaps easier to execute comp. Maybe they could go back to the 4 Demoses, see how that one goes. With that, we're going to send it back to the desk for some more analysis.
Sino's up.
Pump up the dams, pump it up while your team is stumping. And the dams are pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor.
There we are. So, Goonswarm Federation taking the first victory of Alliance Tournament 19 feeders and securing themselves a spot in the main tournament. They are done. We will not see more of them until the main event later this year. They can rest on their laurels, happy in the fact that they have secured that critical spot. And of course, 10 skins. Snuffed out, of course, choking their ticker is, of course, BBC. They're maybe have a strategy just to try and get more skins by going through the Galenti gamble. Who knows? But we will certainly see them again later today. Let's see if they can pull out a dub later on. Now, it looked like Mystical Might that Snuff were in a good position early on in that match. They seemed to have it. They seemed to, the commentators were saying it looks like, hey, good try, Goonswarm Federation, get back in your box. But then it all seemed to just turn around. What happened?
I think there are a number of things that happened. Goons seemed to be losing to Snuff originally, mainly because I don't think they were flying their comp all that well. They had a high damage comp with a fair bit of projection, but I think because they were being jammed a lot, they were scrambling a bit to try and put damage out, but not really coordinating much. So we saw damage coming across 5 different ships at once, most of them getting to about half armor, but then all of them getting rep back up slowly, instead of focusing fire onto one particular target. I think also that there was a boundary, I think, on the Snuff side, right? At some point,
yes,
which is fantastic.
Negritas managed to boundary a
and the
carries, the
carries.
first boundary of the tournament in the first match.
Yep, very strong performance from Snuff. I would say that Snuff's comp was also harder to execute. So with the ECM setups, you want to be able to screen the damage ships away from your ECM ships to prevent them from getting the maximum damage on, because they're not that tanky, but they're very good about splitting how much damage is coming into a singular ship at one time. We didn't really see that coming out from the Magus, the Confessor, and I think maybe the Pontifex set Snuff had. I can't quite remember. They weren't really screening, and in fact, we saw the Guardian and some of the Blackbirds be surrounded by the DPS ships from Goons towards the middle of the match, which is where it began to swing.
And one of the things that is probably worth talking about at this stage of the tournament, aka just after the first match, is some of the key rule changes that exist from last year to this year. Now, Ian Tan, one of the critical ones is the changes to E-War. How was it last year, and what's different this year?
So in the previous Alliance Tournament, Alliance Tournament 18, there was a change to the rules where you were allowed to fit scripts to your E-War modules again. And this turned out to be incredibly, incredibly powerful. And we saw people flying some absolutely ridiculously amazing ships. We saw Cyclone fleets running a single plate as their only tank module, and then filling their mid slots with damps and guidance disruptors and tracking disruptors, and just slowing the game down, forcing their opponents to fly through molasses as they gently plinked away at them from range. And as amazing as that was, and a true, display of skill, it's also a bit of a display of degeneracy, and it doesn't bring the explosions and the brawls and the big matches that we love to see here on Alliance Tournament Day. So this year, you are only allowed to fit scripts to your E-War modules if you are flying a ship which is bonus to them. So that means your Celestises, your Kerries, your Mauluses, all of those sorts of things can fit damps with the lock range and scan res scripts to them. And similarly for the arbitrator for tracking disruptors and all of the other scripted EWAR that you can think of.
Mystical Mike, how do you think this is going to affect the overall theory crafting? I mean, last year we saw things like the glorious Armor Jackdaw just slap as many EWAR mids in that thing as possible. And of course, some teams, some captains, Koff, Mirror Chief Koff, just love to find any way to put as many EWAR modules on to the comp as possible. You can't get away with that as much this year. Our team's going to skew towards picking those bonus hulls, even though they might be more expensive, or are we just going to forgo EWAR a bit more this year?
I think it could go one of two ways. EWAR is super strong, and when you put it on a bonus toll, that EWAR is even stronger. So we saw quite a bit of that on things like Jackdaws, where you don't actually get a bonus to damps, for example. But if you bring a Maulus or a Celestis, then you'll get that bonus to damps, but you'll also lose a bit of the damage and the utility that the Jackdaw provides. So we may see some teams opt to drop a DPS ship and bring a fully fledged EWAR ship to really put that EWAR to use. It could be extremely effective against the logistics, making sure that your enemy can't actually stray too far away from their scimitars and guardians, for example, or else they lose lock. But you can also try and switch targets quite rapidly if you pair it with an ECM ship. And if you scan res damp a guardian or a scimitar, then it takes a long time for it to actually lock up the ship you're shooting, which means that killing those smaller ships is useful. On the flip side, we may just see more remote assistance coming out from some of these things like Jackdaws, with remote tracking, remote ECCM coming out to counter some of the EWAR that we may be seeing. Really, it can go one of two ways. It depends if people favor the damage or the utility that they get from the EWAR.
Yeah, now it will be interesting to see how the meta develops. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we've not seen peak meta in our first match there. Goonswarm and Snuffed are not two of the most well-known storied tournament teams famed for their theory crafting. Of course, Goons are in. I salute them. It's not a common occurrence in the Alliance Tournament. Usually they stumble and fail, but this time first in marbles, first spot secured. So congratulations to Goonswarm Federation there. Now let's look forward to our next match, which is Banana versus Platinum Sensitivity. Yintan, tell me a little bit about these teams here.
So Platinum Sensitivity are the Japanese team. We moved to an admiral.
RJ, we're playing the intro. I'm not sure if this intro. I think it's pretty cool.
Apparently they can still hear us, so it's fine.
Yeah.
You can keep talking.
All right, okay. I guess we should talk over this. Anyway, so the teams. So Banana are a Polish wormhole team. At least that's my understanding of them. I've not had the pleasure of running into them in Tranquility, but I've heard that they are at least relatively competent. Most wormhole teams do have experience flying in small gang, which is more than you can say for some of the nullsec contenders. But then again, wormholers do also have kind of a historical, shall we say, predisposition for not finishing particularly well when it comes to the actual Alliance tournament.
We can see us.
Hey, you can see us again. Hey guys,
I love that intro. It's a great intro. Here we go. So we can see bans. Okay. Apparently this was the button that was meant to be pressed, but it seems like the intro button is unpushable, so we must watch the intro. So here's the bans. Banana banning out the Widow and the Barghest. Platinum Sensitivity choosing to ban out that Abaddon and the Redeemer. And then there's some trickle bans in there, but I'm not convinced that they are real. Mystical Mike, what do you think about these bans?
I'm just going to assume that the first bans are the correct ones. It's fairly interesting to see the Redeemer ban come out. There was that buff to the Redeemer which made the Newt stronger. It doesn't give it extra range, but it does make it a little bit more powerful by half, I think, which is pretty cool. The Abaddon is an interesting one, but we have seen versions of an Amar high damage kind of rush comp where they've brought Abaddons and Oracles before, which is extremely effective at just kind of shitting out damage onto a ship and making it die. And it's fairly hard to avoid that damage as well, since they project quite well. I think it's interesting to see a Widow ban. I don't know how many teams are going to emphasize bringing Widows especially in the feeders bracket. It's something that I think a team might try and Hail Mary later on in the tournament when it's least expected, depending on how the meta develops. But it's not exactly a strong ship when it comes to tanking or damage, but it does have a lot of jams. But with the change to jams, it can still be shot when it's jamming things. So it depends a lot on the support ships that someone decides to bring with the Widow.
So just quickly, some people asking about trickle bans. Now, trickle bans don't exist, I believe, in the feeder this year. But Jintan, can you give us like a 20-second overview of what trickle bans actually are?
So if two people ban two teams ban the same ships, the trickle bans ensure that a reasonable selection of ships are actually banned from the total pool by giving both teams the opportunity to ban in accordance with how many bans that they agreed on the same pick with.
Okay, perfect. Now let's go to this match between Banana and Platinum Sensitivity with Alexei and Wingnut.
Hello, this is Alexei of Card with what is shaping up to be an exciting match. Banana in here with a ECM Blaster Rush comp. I am so hyped for this. Wingnut, what do we have on the Platinum Sensitivity side as this match gets underway?
Yeah, they got DPS projection here, so we're going to have like a lot of ECM with a lot of damage, but then against what is going to just absolutely rip apart. As you can see, 2 Hecate's already dead. I don't know why they brought 2, but this is very not the match I was expecting to see, and it's honestly going so damn quickly. We're not going to get much of it.
Oh no, this is terrible for Banana. They lost 3 of their blaster ships already. The Scorpions have not actually been successful with their jams.
3 Scorpions. I want whatever they're smoking, because apparently it's some good shit. Rapid heavy Scorpions.
I mean, the theory is sound, right? What Banana's trying to do is jam out the enemy DPS so that the blasters can get on top and fight unencumbered, but they did not land the initial round of jams. They've lost all of their damage in seconds. Terrible. Oh, my heart goes out to them. This is such an exciting comp.
They're just going. It's like watching fireworks or popcorn in the machine. This is never ending. Already their support wing is gone. The last Logi's about to get deleted. Now you've got 3 entirely anemic Scorpions who are like, but we jammed. But we jammed things. And
I was literally bouncing in my chair seeing this comp warp in, and I have never been so disappointed in my entire life.
I was hoping to see DPS rush versus hiding rush, but they died so damn fast that these Scorpions did exactly 0. Brutal.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe just bad luck on the rolls, but the Scorpions did not draw aggro like they were supposed to, and their team fell apart so fast.
Part of the problem I have with it, at least, is that you brought 2 Logi frigates with ships like Hecate's that are not particularly tanky. They don't last long enough to even get reps on to begin with your short-range reppers, so it was just, I don't think it's really, this comp is just, I don't know, it's so stacked with Scorpions, you're missing so much in it, I think. Just
I think they might have been better off going with the 2 in Scorps instead of 3. They probably still would have had enough ECM to do what they were hoping to do, but a few more points to play with to get some beefier Logi, maybe some kind of links to help them out. Not sure what they could have done differently here. It's a great idea on paper.
There's a lot of ways you do it. You could do Scorpions and Blackbirds. You do Scorpions and a Kitsune if you really wanted to. You could really spread out the options, but no. We want 3 Scorpions because we got stinging tails, yo. We just want to start stabbing people. No.
Platinum Sensitivity here looking great. They're well on their way to a flawless victory.
Yeah, I know this is going to sound mean, but do they deserve this one? Or is this more just Banana's face planting so hard they went through the floor?
I think they deserve it a little bit. They had a lot of poise in the face of an absurd amount of jams. They had excellent target calling, and they're moving on to the next round.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. That was a very quick match, and we'll go very quickly back to the desk as well.
Guys, stop being casual. They're really bad. We should not lose anybody to this. Warp off. Warp off. Take the fleet warp. Everybody warp off. This is really, really bad execution. I'm very disappointed.
Another great haul back from Amar. Damn, I'm thirsty. Ah, that hits the spot.
Yeah, we actually lost a bet as CCP collectively, so that's why that Alliance logo is in the game. Of course, you could change your alliance by leaving, but that would be kind of a jerk move.
That kind
Like, oh, you don't like it? Just leave.
This logo sucks. I'm gonna go join.
Well, there we are. Platinum Sensitivity cleaning up in the fruit aisle there. Pretty solid win over Banana. I guess that didn't go to plan for Team Banana, bringing a triple Scorpion. Mystical Might, that seems like a bold choice. I mean, is triple Scorpion, can it work? Or did they just not execute well here?
So I've annoyed Hydra with the idea of like a banana split comp, which is funny because Banana brought this comp. And the idea was that you have multiple Scorpions that act as like ECM towers, and they all split apart, so that you have to chase each one down individually, and you just keep jamming people off of the other Scorpions. This was not a very effective use of the Scorpion because they decided to ram their entire team in before the Scorpions had actually established lock on anything, and managed to lose both of their Hecates and basically half an exec before jams started to come out, really. I think you want a tankier team that can kind of sit back and limit the amount of damage that a team can project against you, because you're not going to be moving quickly with 3 Scorpions on your side, and they kind of melded Blaster Rush with Scorpions, which obviously didn't work too well for them. And it's important to note that their logistic ships were 2 Logi frigates, the Thalia and I believe the Deacon, and they looked like they were moving extremely slowly for a rush comp, being left completely behind by the exec navies that burned in.
Yeah, Jintan, do you think there's something else that Banana could have done there to, find some sort of route towards victory? I mean, we know Platinum Sensitivity are a very strong team with some really good players. They did pretty well last year. I can't remember exactly where they got to. I want to say top 8, but they are by no means a bad team. That being said, could Banana have done anything different with what they brought?
Not with what they brought. What they brought, like they were going up against, maybe if Platinum Sensitivity had brought a composition which was a bit more reliant on like interdependent, interlocking mechanisms. For example, if they brought whatever their own version of the Blackbird control comp that we saw Snuffed out bring previously, they brought something like that. Maybe somehow through the pure gods of RNG, they could have enabled themselves to have a victory. But when you are going up against medium gun spam, which is what Platinum Sensitivity brought, there's nowhere on grid you can hide. There's no way you can separate damage, because even if your Scorpions get 100 kilometers away from one another, they bounce around on all these MJDs, you're still going to be able to shoot the Scorpion that's 100 kilometers away from yourself with long-range medium guns. The whole strategy is completely ineffective against what Platinum Sensitivity brought. They needed to have kind of researched what comps like that existed and take them out in the ban phase if they wanted any hope of something like this being able to be pulled off.
Mystical Might, you were very polite there. You raised your hand. I give you the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much. I just wanted to raise that I think this is the second match in which Wingnut and Jintan have now faced off against each other with their picks. This time with Wingnut, I believe, taking the win and Jintan losing. So yeah, it seems like a very intense little battle between the two for now.
Nice. I'm hoping we can get an update on that after today. Maybe Jintan, you can work out the points and we can see where the standings are. But yeah, so that was Banana. That comp was about as good as their current Alliance logo. Now we did see what looked like, you mentioned medium gun spam. This gives me shades and memories of the old Octodad, as it was known, which was a pretty popular archetype from Alliance Tournament 16, I believe, where it was just battle cruisers with medium guns. Mystical Might, tell me about that comp. Why was it so popular? And do you think we could see more medium gun spam this tournament?
I mean, I think it's fair to say we've seen 2 matches so far, and we've seen 2 versions of the Octodad in the new AT environment. We've seen an armor comp version with Platinum Sensitivity, and we've seen a shield version with Goonswarm in the previous match. The armor one, it seemed, was much more effective. I think that's down to the fact that you can fit tracking computers to the armor variants, which means that you can extend how far you can shoot using the optimal range script, or you can use the tracking speed script to hit those smaller targets when they're burning in towards you. It's a very effective setup because it's making use of medium-sized hulls with the battle cruisers and the normal cruisers to put out a lot of medium turret damage, which is harder for people to avoid with good piloting, just because they have better tracking. So Bart was typing in some of the back channels that you've got like thousands of DPS worth of medium turret damage coming in on your ships that you can't really mitigate. So you just need to be able to stand there and tank. And especially in an environment where we have a lot of Logi frigates, they just don't have that rep power to allow them to withstand that much damage coming in, and they can't really mitigate damage from these medium turrets if the side that has the medium turrets has things like target painters to bloom their signature.
Yeah, those Logi frigates, it's always an interesting decision to go between Tech 2 logistic cruiser and Tech 1 logistic cruiser, and then do you drop down to the pair of logistic frigates? Sometimes we even see Tech 1 logistics frigates. It's only 2 points, but I don't believe it has a very good track record of being successful bringing Tech 1 logistic frigates. Jintan, what did we see a lot of last year, and do you think it'll be the same, or do you think we'll see more of a switch in the logistics meta this year?
We actually saw a fairly good mix of logistics ships last year. It was, I believe, very slightly weighted towards the T2 logistics cruisers because those offer you the most power when they're flown successfully. But a lot of teams will probably, especially at this point in the tournament, focus in on T2 logistics frigates because they require more work from your opponents to kill them. One frigate getting a tackle, a web or a scram on a logistics frigate is not normally enough to kill it. You need to back that up with either a lot of medium guns, which can track them really effectively, or dedicated paints and multiple webs to be able to allow your larger DPS ships, normally battleships, to actually apply to them properly. And in this kind of lower period of basically competition, we've still got 2 months more of practice to go until the real tournament. A lot of teams aren't going to be able to handle that, and you'll expect to see a lot of veteran teams take advantage of that, run comps which rely on T2 logistics frigates, and just expect their opponents to not be able to properly deal with them.
Awesome. Now, Mystical Mike, this is the first tournament sponsored by the Gallente Federation since Alliance Tournament 8. So this year we have reduction on Gallente hulls. And that means things like a 9-point Vigilant. The Gallente Rush has been a long-term favorite, not necessarily the most successful archetype anymore, but it is still a popular one. What do you think about the reduction of points for these Gallente ships?
I think the reduction of points has been an interesting concept across all of the tournaments. I think it is most widely applied in this tournament compared to some of the previous ones where we've seen point reductions. The Minotaur one might have been fairly widespread as well. But ultimately, I think it's going to be fairly interesting to see how people play with the number of point reductions across Gallente ships, because Gallente ships are fairly versatile in the ways that you can play them. You can have the rail kite setups. We've seen how effective they are in the previous match, where you're able to project your damage and kill off some of those smaller ships really quickly. But you can also have those really high damage rush setups where they just warp to 0 and decide to burn at whatever's closest and pray that they can break through it before they die. I expect that people are going to lean more towards projection because it's safer for them, and it means that you're less likely to just gamble on losing at the very start of your match when you warp in, because warping to 0 is generally understood to be a very poor decision in most matchups, right? It doesn't give you much flexibility in terms of responding to the comp that your enemy brings, so you're kind of stuck with one play when you're at 0, whereas if you come in at 20, you have a bit more maneuverability. You can burn away if you need to. You're not stuck in that position. So yeah, I'm expecting more projection and a solid mix of ships, because there's also that point addition rule for each additional hull of the same type that you bring.
Yeah, there has been a couple of times where we've had two teams both warping at 0 each other, and it's pretty catastrophic for everyone involved, but it is good fun. Now, speaking of Gallente, one of the cool things that you can get from winning matches in the Alliance Tournament, and not just the main tournament, but also the feeders, this is pretty cool, we've extended this year, is the new victory skins for the Gallente, and I believe we can We can pop them up on the screen. Check this out. Look at this gold, glorious. I love this. I just think it looks so cool. I think the color choices are incredible. They are so gold. They are so shiny, and they've got that pretty cool pattern kind of going across into the turquoisey color. Jintan, are these not pretty hashtag poggers?
These are, in fact, extremely poggers. I would, in fact, call them nodders.
Nodders, exactly. I will also call you that. I mean, there's such a good range of ships there as well. So every team that wins at least one match in the Alliance Tournament 19 gets themselves 10 of these, which is pretty awesome. I'm actually super pleased that we were able to extend it into the feeders this year. So, you know, a team that maybe loses this match in this round and goes out in maybe the third round, winning at least one match in the feeders. They haven't lost anything on TQ, but they've gained themselves some pretty nice skins. So to clarify, this is happening on Thunderdome. The feeders right now are on the Thunderdome server, not on Tranquility. That means all of our pilots have perfect skills. Everything is free, and it is purely down to the individual piloting skill and theory crafting from each team to secure the W. Misty, you look like you got something to say.
Yes, I'm being very nice and school oriented, I suppose. I was going to say, I think that the point reduction, just for clarity for the stream, is applied to Galente Navy ships. So when I'm thinking about the projection, I'm thinking more like Brudix Navy or Exec Navy that we might be seeing, which were also fairly popular last year as well. So honestly, should be fairly interesting to see how they're used this year. They'll probably be banned a lot. The Vigilant, I think, is always 9 points. So that may be like a tweak from previous years in terms of the point weighting that CCP has given, but I don't think it benefits from the Galente Navy reduction.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I think that part of my brain just got hit by Muterator as well. He's been just striking out left, right, and center today. So it's been pretty tough. We don't know exactly where he is, but he's always lurking. Now let's look forward to our next matchup, which is Brave Collective versus Kitchen Sinkhole. Now I know one person who's going to be all in on Kitchen Sinkhole, and that is Fear Vina, member of the Brave team, famously refused to draft them in Jintan's fantasy games because he just assumes that they're going to lose. So let's look at the bans. Brave Collective banning out the Kerrys and the Mollas. So they're like, hey, see them damps? GTFO, we do not want to see them. Meanwhile, Kitchen Sinkhole banning the Blackbird and the Vindicator. So ECM and Big Boy Webs and DPS. Mystical Might, what do you make of these bans? Interesting ones here.
I mean, again, it kind of calls back to the discussion we were just having about how teams are going to adapt to the EWAR changes this year. Because we've changed EWAR rules so that you can only fit them on bonus tolls, it makes it easier for teams to ban out the type of EWAR that they don't want to see. It suggests that they've practiced against heavy damp comps that have used frigates to burn around at the edge of their ranges and prevent projected damage onto them to cripple the Brave fleets. And Kitchen Sinkhole's ban of the Blackbird and Vindicator suggest that they've gone up against some of the Blackbird comps that we may have seen last year that utilized, I think, the Vindicator and Balgorn screening for the Blackbirds, and they've decided that they just don't like that and they can't deal with it. So I think it shows a bit about what they think they're weakest against and not necessarily what's strong in the meta at this moment, because there isn't much of a meta to go off. So teams should be noting down all of these bans to get a better idea about what teams have been testing against, really.
Yeah, sometimes you see teams that maybe practice against each other a couple of times, or they have a practice partner where they get themselves into this like brain hole of this comp is very good, and then their bans hit the main tournament and they start banning what everyone else thinks is just bizarre stuff. And it's, you know, they've been mentally scarred from some horrible experience in a practice match with some other people. And it can be super interesting because this goes both ways. Sometimes teams develop a super interesting meta, which doesn't come out till later in the tournament. So will this pay off for Brave? Who knows? Will this pay off for Kitchen Sinkhole? We will certainly find out. As we can head over to the arena, I'm checking. I don't see Muterator anywhere near, so we should have Chad Flame this time, as well as the Basilisk for this match between Brave Collective and Kitchen Sinkhole.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the arena. So we can see Kitchen Sinkhole here. 30 seconds until the match starts. Kitchen Sinkhole have brought this double Lashat, pretty heavy control comp. They're all quite bunched up. 50 away, though. They've all warped in at 50, which is a bit of an unusual choice because this comp obviously quite short range. It's only got little shacks for damage. You can only project out to like sort of 55 kilometers. So you generally want to be sort of up close and personal with this kind of comp. Up against the Brave comp with a Balgon and 2 Armageddon Navies. So I'm pretty scared right now if I'm Kitchen Sinkhole. I think this may be a pretty tricky matchup. What do you think, Chad?
I 100% agree with you. I'm more interested to see how that curse is going to play out and if it chose the correct forms of disruption to do on that Brave team, because that might make a match difference because the points spent on that curse.
Yeah, I'm not generally speaking sort of a fan of the curse. I think it's quite expensive, but if they have, this is a situation where it could be quite useful having that the advantage of the cycle time of the smaller and medium newts on the curse when you're trying to fight this newt war that is inevitably going to take place between the battleships here.
Yeah, it does seem that the curse is putting weapon disruptors on the Geddon navies, hopefully shutting down that gun range or tracking a little bit. I agree with you with that points cost for the curse is high, but if you are a good pilot, you can definitely make that ship do some work, as the Griffins seem to be the primary of Brave Collective here.
Yeah, they're trying to get this ECM off the field. It's just so annoying to deal with, and Griffins are pretty difficult to keep up, even against battleship turrets. One good hit is all it's going to take, and they are going to go down here. And I actually quite like the choice of Brave here to fit gun Armageddon Navies, because if you mix guns in this comp, if you fit missile disruptors on the Armageddon Navies and guns on the Balgorn, if that curse has got 2 of each, then all of your battleships are being disrupted. But as it looks like, it seems like he's only got two tracking disruptors to spread between those 3 battleships, because they're all using the same weapon system. So it is going to be 2 Armageddon Navies who he's trying to track and disrupt. They are chunking this Griffin, but Alexis suddenly catches a huge bundle of reps there and is straight back up to full health. And I think these battleships might be having a little bit of difficulty actually tracking as they are still burning in.
I was just checking to make sure, but that Balgorn is a gun Balgorn, so they do not have enough tracking disruptors, or are choosing to use them heavier on those Geddon navies instead of trying to disrupt the Balgorn at this point.
Yeah, but that said, I'm actually still kind of surprised that they are able to hit this Griffin of Alexis Starbuck so reliably. He isn't dying just yet, but I mean, he's teetering in low armor. He keeps catching reps, but I can see a world where he goes down here. He's going into hull. He's catching reps again, but I mean, there he goes. But
it also takes us that one shot.
Yeah, just the one shot.
One shot, but you're just waiting on one shots. You're banking on one lucky shot. Sometimes, that's all you can do, and sometimes that's what you have to do. So we will see one Griffin down. It looks like they're off the other Griffin and going hard in on the DPS wing of Kitchen Sinkhole now.
Yeah, so Brave has managed to push in here with the Balgon and the 2 Geddon, so this has devolved into a little bit of a brawl here with all these battleships parked up pretty close to each other. So we're going to see how the Newt War is going to turn out amongst this top end here. The 3 top ships in points cost of each of these comps is going to be pretty heavily indexed into newts. We do see that second Griffin go down, but I think at this point, when it devolves into a brawl like this, that Griffin probably wasn't going to last that long anyway, and he may not even be the priority target. Maybe it was drones that finished him off or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what they ended up doing. Augur just got chunked. Instant chunked.
Yeah, he's just been absolutely evaporated. I think the newt pressure here is going to end up being in favor of Brave. They got 3 battleship pools, obviously battleships, heavy cat boosters, Navy 3200s. It's going to be very, very difficult to actually win the newt war here, even for the 2 Leshaks, which are going to have a bunch of newts themselves. The Balgorn, obviously, exceptionally powerful. The curse gets absolutely volleyed off the field, and this is going from bad to worse for Kitchen Sinkhole. They have not got long left in this match. The Federation Navy Comet goes down now. Without that Augur, everything is just dropping.
Everything does not have the DPS to handle the triple battleship Alpha that is just destroying these ships in a matter of seconds. E&I about to go down as well. It does not look like Kitchen Sinkhole is going to be able to do much. Those Leshaks looks like they're potentially neuted out. They might take a Geddon Navy with them, but the newt pressure is going to make them fold by the time they get done killing that.
Yeah, they're clearly spooled up on this Geddon. They are managed to break through him, and it's going to be in a 2 battleship versus 2 battleship situation. Of course, 2 on one side are Leshaks, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. As you say, the newt pressure is going to be overwhelming from this point from the Geddon Navy and the Balgorn. The Balgorn obviously simply just cannot newt out. If it's got NOSes fitted, it will NOS you. If it's full cap, it'll still NOS you. So NOSes on Balgorns, pretty good. Newts on Balgorns, also pretty damn good. So, the Leshaks here, without Logi, are just not going to win this DPS race against the 2 battleships and all the support that's left. The Svipul obviously still pumping out damage. The Mala for newts. It's going to be
that
very,
low end
very
is just picking apart the rest of Kitchen Sinkhole here, and they're just going to then flock onto these Leshaks, and they're going to go down even quicker. I do not see Kitchen Sinkhole being able to kill a single ship left on grid at this point. I think they're both just about neuted out. They're still shooting, but the longer this match goes on, the less capacitor they're going to have.
Yeah, and of course, like I said at the start, with the medium newts on the curse, Brave also bringing a Mala, which I'm going to presume is full newt fit as well, and those things can be absolutely really, really devastating, especially to Logi frigates, but also to battleships that have, they've got Navy cap 3200s. So they think, we need to keep cap up over the course of the match, get as much cap into your cargo hold as possible that you can just pump it out quickly, but it's not nearly quick enough to deal with the neuting of a Mala when you're low on cap, when you're empty. You can't do anything. You can't play the game, really.
Exactly. It seems like if they can manage to trade to get in Navy, now it's going to be a lot of nuke pressure left on that last Leshek, but they're going to be in a battleship 1v1 that's still not looking in their favor, but it's the only chance they have is if they can hope that this one Leshek survives long enough to get this Navy Armageddon down, a very tanky ship. It does not look like that is going to happen, though.
Yeah, I think maybe at the end here, it looks like it could have gone a little bit closer if Sinkhole had maybe bought 30 more seconds with their Griffins before they were able to switch, damaging a little, 30 seconds longer, pumping into that first Geddon Navy with the Lesheks, getting spooled up before the nuke pressure starts affecting you. And they might have been able to turn this, but it is now just going to be Baralt slowly dying. Ensign Leon not going to die just on his own from the damage from one Leshek coming in with his Logi frigates still alive. And I just want to talk about the bans for a second, because Brave Collective, as they said on the desk, choosing to ban Moreless carries, it's quite an interesting choice, because if you're flying Kite, you want to damp people, right? Because you're saying, we want to fight you at range. So you need to burn into us. But if you're flying Brawl, you also want to damp people. Damp's also very useful in that scenario as well. So it's a very powerful utility ban, because it doesn't really give anything away about how you want to fly the match, because these ships are useful in so many different comps. So it doesn't tell the opponent, we're going to fly Kite.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does seem like those bans are basic in the sense that it doesn't allow teams to play very good mind games. It doesn't give any tells, and it just, is something that people don't necessarily want to see in any circumstance. But with that being said, our final Leshek goes down, which wraps up the match, and we will be sending it back to the desk.
Sino's up.
Pump up the dams, pump it up while your team is stumping. And the dams are pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Brave Collective taking out Kitchen Sinkhole in a pretty comfortable victory there for the Brave Collective. Mystical Might, I believe you had in the fantasy match Brave Collective, and Fear Vina of Brave Collective, in fact, chose Kitchen Sinkhole. You must be feeling pretty happy right now.
Yep, I mean, easy points secured, I'm sure. Jintan just tried to throw at me that I'm minus 400 points somehow, but he's going to have to explain the maths on that one to me, because as it goes, I'm feeling like a winner right now.
Well, right now, teams can only be guaranteed either out of the feeders or in the tournament. And if you're in the tournament, you can have the lowest result you could get is minus 10 points. And if you're still in the feeders, the lowest you could get is minus 100 points if you fail to qualify for the real tournament. So all of your other picks have yet to qualify, Mystical Might.
I see. Okay, don't worry. They're all going to get through. I've picked up the very best, the creme de la creme of the AT. So
only the finest of boys.
Now, one of the things, guys, I wanted to talk about was the use of the double Leshek. We don't see them very often. There was a period in, I believe, Alliance Tournament 16, which was sponsored by the Triglavian Collective, when Lesheks had a significantly reduced points, where they were super popular. Not only that, they were also pretty popular as flagships. In this tournament, we have no flagships. They are 25 points, I think. That's a lot of points. That's 52 points because of point inflation. Or 50 points if they're 24. I cannot math. Jintan, tell me, why would you choose to bring two Lesheks? It's a huge number of points, however many they may be.
Now, I don't know exactly why you'd choose to bring two Lesheks, but I can tell you why you'd bring one. And you bring one because a Leshek on its own, it fulfills one of the three corners of the triangle that you want to have when you're talking about a EVE Online Alliance Tournament team. And the first triangle is you have 3000 DPS, and a Lashak can do that on its own. From that point, basically the rest of your comp doesn't need to do any damage. So you can focus really, really hard on having support, control, something to stop your opponent's game plan from being put into effect. And you can sink all the remaining 75 points that you have to your disposal on that. In this case, however, you bring 2 of them, and that means that you do an incredible amount of damage, but you don't really have the support that you need to get those Lashaks into position and to keep them firing until that damage is actually, will take effect, because it takes around 2-3 minutes for a Lashak to spool up to that level of DPS, and you're not going to be able to do that on your own. As you saw, those Griffins, they played a role. They were trying to get them there, but it wasn't enough. If those had been Kitsunes or some form of, heavy cruiser that could go in there and maybe smash aside the wolf pack of Brave's tackle, Kitchen Sinkhole would have been able to win this match, but they just weren't able to do it.
Yeah, Misty, we also saw what some might consider questionable tactics, spilling the shacks on logistics frigates. Why might that not be the smartest of ideas here?
Well, that's making an assumption, all right? Maybe you should be asking, why is that the optimal strategy to be using a Lashakin? Okay, so it's not optimal because you're not going to be doing your damage, right? It's incredibly hard to track logistics frigates. Jintan mentioned this, I believe, in the recap of the previous match. Unless you have the proper support, which is target painters and webs, they are extremely hard to hit with large turrets. Now, there is an interesting mechanic in EVE Online called the wrecking mechanic, right? Where you can get wrecking shots with your guns. And I believe that means that it will apply regardless of whether it should apply if you roll the dice and you get that wrecking shot. So if you spool with a Lashak and you miss 100 out of 101 shots, that 101th shot that you have will be fully spooled regardless of whether it hit or not, and it will do wrecking damage on top. So you can volley things that you can't hit, but I don't know if that's worth gambling your 10 minutes of AT feeder time trying to do. I think there were better ways for them to fly, which is pulling their entire comp backwards, protecting their Griffins from the drones that were put on them. They were holding the Griffins for a while, but the drones eventually broke through the reps that the Augury was able to provide, and the Navy exec was caught out of position by the Newting Mauler that Brave brought, meaning that it was capped out and also unable to contribute damage-wise to any of the ships on the on the Brave side. If they'd pulled back and instead skirmished with the wolf pack that Brave had, they may have been able to clear some of the Sveeple and the Punisher that Brave were using to pin down ships, and then use their ships to screen some of the Brave collective battleships, and that may have helped them draw out the match a bit. Ultimately, I think it was down to poor positioning and also poor target calling, because really Lashak should have just been shooting something bigger, like the battleships from the beginning.
Yeah, I saw some of that chatter going on in our sort of production channels. People saying, why don't you just control space your ships and do more damage, because you're just kind of like orbiting with your marker warp drive on and out tracking yourself. Jintan, you've played in a bunch of matches. How easy is it to kind of just spaghetti in these matches? Like, you go in thinking, hey, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and then the timer hits 0, and then suddenly you're like, what game am I playing? Is this Minecraft? It can just be super stressful. Tell me about that.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is a really stressful thing to do, playing in an actual AT match, because there's 2 parts to it. First of all, playing EVE Online at like a perfect level, or as close as you can humanly do it, is really, really difficult, because you're not relying on your right-click approaches. You're not relying on your right-click orbits. You are manually clicking in space the whole time. And then whilst you're doing that, you've got to activate your modules. You've got to manage your heat. You've got to put your drones out. You've got to look up both your opponents and your allies. You've got to be keeping an eye on positioning. If you're a tackle ship, you've got to watch your primary tackle target and also keep an eye out to see if there's any lanes free for you to go onto logistics. If you're in a battleship, you're probably taking some sort of a higher level command role, because you're the ship that most desperately needs to be in the right position. So you're trying to keep an eye on what all of your allies are doing and how that's interacting with what your opponents are doing. And from all of that, your mechanics, the things that you've spent years and years training up playing EVE, they go all out the window, and it's just a bunch of people throwing spaghetti at each other in the middle of the arena after about 5 minutes, and then whoever realizes that they aren't tackled and they can get to the logistics usually wins.
It pretty much sums up the experience, especially for teams who maybe have less experience overall, which is one of the reasons why I think the feeders are being on Thunderdome is such a good idea, because we've got teams who maybe have never competed before. You just have to register. You just have to sign up to be part of this. Like, it's basically free. I think it's 500 plex just to buy in, and that's kind of it. You just turn up, you get to play, and you get to have a chance to win some cool ships. And if you bring some cheese thing, and don't let your memes be dreams, as they say, maybe you walk away with your head held high. At the end of the day, you're not going to lose anything of true value. Now, you mentioned briefly this concept of you lose the target, like you get a bit stuck on what you're doing, and it's very easy to do target fixation. And I think we saw a little bit of that in that last match with those Lashaks just spilling and spilling and spilling. Misty, as you said, trying to get that wrecking shot, and it's just at some point you have to switch off early, because you have to realize, hey, this strategy is not working. We can't just keep doing the same thing. We have to try change it. That call of what we're doing is not working, let's change. Like, how hard is that to make in a match?
I would say it's incredibly difficult depending on team dynamic. One of the important things that I think good teams have is communication. And it's not all one person making decisions for the team. It's a number of different people in different roles streaming information in, collecting. So you'll have the logistics pilot explaining how difficult it is keeping a target up. You'll have your damage ships talking about whether they're screened or whether they're applying good damage. You'll have your tackle ships saying whether they have their tackles or not, or who they're burning for. And based on all of that information, it makes it easier to make your decisions because you know what's happening. If you're leaving it to one person to decide whether to swap off of a target, then you're never going to really know, okay, how is the rest of the match progressing around me? And do we need to make a different decision at this point to keep ourselves in the game? And also another thing is the sunken cost fallacy, which is what keeps most of us playing EVE Online, I'm sure, which is you've put enough damage into a target already, so you don't want to swap off of that target, especially if you have Lashaks which spool up over time, because then you're resetting that damage back to its base level and you have to begin again. So there's a number of different factors to consider, especially depending on the comp that you're using. Lashaks probably suffer from this a bit more than any other ship. But yeah, it's extremely difficult. It's a team game for sure, and it shouldn't be left up to one person.
Exactly right. Now, speaking of a team game, well, you guys out there in Twitch land, you can be part of this too. You can use your Twitch channel points, and you can predict who you think is going to win. And you can exchange those for some pretty cool prizes, random Galnet skins. You can, if you want to, you could highlight your message. I would keep it for the skins personally, and then maybe even save them up until the main event, because we have seen plenty of cool prizes in the Alliance Tournament in the past, ranging from EVE Online watches to some other rare and interesting things. Now, looking at the current predictions, the Ancients seem to be the crowd favorite right now. Nearly 600,000 channel points to just 160,000 for Wormageddon. Wormholers not doing so hot thus far in the Alliance Tournament. We have only got to match 4, and already we've got more than that number of Wormhole teams eliminated, because some of them didn't even turn up. So it's pretty rough for Wormholes right now. Mark Resurrectus in absolute shambles. Let's take a quick look at the bans here. So the Ancients banning out Barghest and Curse, and Wormageddon banning out the can't see it. The Kerries and the Scimitar. There we are. So, Mystical Mike, quick 20-second thoughts on these bans.
Okay, I assume with the Kerries and the Scimitar ban that, again, they don't want to deal with fast ships that are able to project their damps and prevent their team from, I guess, establishing lock, or, whether that's due to distance damps like targeting range or scanres damps for their logistics. Interestingly, the Scimitar suggests that they don't want to go up against fast kiting comps that are hard to pin down, because the Scimitar is infamously quick and able to provide fairly decent reps. It's not as strong as the Basilisk, but it's still fairly good. And the Curse is just, I guess, an old-time classic of ships people don't want to see it on an AT grid because of the nuke projection, but also the E-War that you can get in the mids.
Exactly. Now it is time to head over to the arena for the Ancients versus Wormageddon with Alexei and Wingnut.
G'day there, mates, and I'm bloody excited because we've got a lot of Megathrons here, and we've got my favorite ship in the world, piloted by a pilot I actually know. A Vindicator is on grid. Kiatsu, you better do this well. And Alec, I'm so excited. This is gonna be so good.
Yeah, this is going to be a banger of a match. We have a lot of blaster damage on the field, some nuke pressure as well. Some interesting choices here.
Indeed.
The double battleship comp in favor of taking a logistics ship versus 3 battleships and the double logistics frigate.
Now, what's the one ship a Vindicator hates to see? It's the Balgorn. It's basically the perfect thing to control a Vindicator. So I suspect that Vindy's gonna have a lot of trouble with the Bal if everything is flowing correctly as the match is underway, and we're gonna watch ships just screaming in. No, wait, they're pulling away. What?
Well, this is going to be an interesting one. If those logistic frigates get in too close and the Vindicator lands webs on them, it is going to spell absolute doom for Wormageddon. But if they can kite away and resist the temptation to come in and save their battleships from what I'm sure is withering amount of fire from the Brutix Navy, Mega Navy, and Vindicator, then they might be able to win this match.
Yeah, well, the Mega Navy got hard tackled immediately of Hisui and is now being tackled by Megathron Navy, second Megathron Navy, the Balgorn's there. There's smart bombs going off from the Mega Navy of Blue Calori trying to remove drones. Smart bombs on the Mauler as well. This is just chaos. This is a brawl.
Oh, it's a brawl and a bit of a race. Which Mega Navy is going to drop first? That is going to absolutely turn this match. If the
Honestly,
if the Ancients Mega Navy drops, that Bal is going to be able to spread his newts throughout the entire rest of the team fairly safely. Whereas if the Mega Navy from Wormageddon drops, that's a significant chunk of their DPS. They don't really have much aside from those 3 battleships.
No, I'm not biased at all. I want Blue Calori to die first because he has not won the skin game here. Sui Louie's got a sexy skin. I'm loving it. But actually, speaking of, he is starting to go down a bit quicker. There's smart bombs going everywhere. These drones will not last long. This is just chaos.
Yeah, you might be getting your wish here. The Nurgle on Wormageddon, one of their other very distinct choices, is flying around, not doing a hot anything at the minute. He's finally starting to apply some damage, but he's zooming around so much, I guarantee you he is not using his high yield ammo. Questionable choice by this Nurgle pilot, who is basically the DPS of a very well fit hack, being effectively wasted here.
He did have options to chase things out. I think he was trying to go for potentially the Mauls to the opposing side, but I think he decided couldn't catch him. Let's get back but DPS on this and finish this race. And as you can see, they are starting to win now. That Hisui Louis in the Mega Navy, he's going into hull, and Blue Calori, is still in armor. So this is looking bad, and it's going to start looking worse. If that Mega Navy goes down, it's going to be a landslide real quick.
Yeah, the smart bombs are starting to take their toll here. Ooh,
and the smart bombs going
it's
everywhere
a race.
too. It's just beautiful. Oh, and there he goes. Oof. And now that mountain
drops a bit of split fire from the Ancients.
That's going to get so much worse now, because now the Mega Navy might even survive for a lot longer than he should. I think he's about to die. Yeah, thankfully he goes down. He's like, Navy's now next primary, and you can just see the cloud of drones.
Yeah, massive cloud.
They've smart bombed off so many drones, and yet more are still showing up. I love Galente fights.
Yeah, Ancients electing to bring multiple waves of light drones in their expanded Galente drone base, and it's paying off for them here as they're able to refresh their drone count.
Yeah, but unfortunately,
they just lost the Navy Executor from the Ancients. Yeah. Big chunk of damage. That is about 1,000 DPS off the field.
I think as well as this Balgorn is going to be putting nuke pressure on these ships the entire fight. So the Vindicator of Kiatsu and maybe even other ships are just slowly being hurt by this. This is actually, hold on a minute. No, never mind. I just had to double check. I swear I saw it. Yeah, it's a gun Bal.
It's a gun Balgorn.
I for a split second I saw the remote repair effect. Like, wait a minute, what? But no, that's a ship that flew past.
He's putting out some pressure, but it's not nearly as much as you might expect. It looks like right now he's focusing on the Aneros, so he's not reducing any incoming DPS. He's focusing on taking out the logistics.
That could potentially change things. Maul's about to go down too. Yeah, I bet you that Maul's is going down to. Yep, the where is it? I think that was the Nurgle. No, it wasn't. Was that a Pontifex? It was a Magus that did that. Oh, wow. Respect.
Ulrich
Should the
Babadook
Magus-
Deacon, the lone logistic ship from the field here for Wormageddon, he is starting to take some negative attention here as he's surrounded by a massive cloud of light drones dipping into about 1/3 armor here. They may trade him for this Brutix Navy issue, but that is honestly not a great trade.
And meanwhile, the Oneros is hard tackled by a Magus and a Skybreaker, so if they want to go kill him, they easily can. Briggs Navy going down, though, and I'm not seeing much sub the Deacon going down. What's this Vindicator doing? I'm not seeing anything.
A good question. I'm trying to suss it out here. I can tell you that the Balgorn is focusing on just nuding out Zero Cool, my co-host for the Declarations of War podcast, keeping him absolutely powerless as he's tackled by the Skybreaker and nuded down by the Balgorn, taking him out of the fight essentially. But unfortunately, it means the rest of the Ancients DPS is able to run freely. And now we see this Brutix Navy clawing back some armor. Obviously, the Nero's popping a cap charge or two, able to get some reps in.
Yeah, I was watching the Vindicator of Kiatsi, and for a while that he wasn't shooting. Now he's putting his damage back into the Mega Navy, so I'm willing to bet he might have just loaded Void. So he's trying to kill him as quickly as he can. You see now the gun barrel starting also to shoot the Vindicator, so they're trying to remove some of the last bits of DPS, as honestly, that Brutix Navy is tanking very well.
I am not seeing any neutralizing effects coming off of the Balgorn right now. It may have run out of cap.
Yeah, or maybe yeah, he might. What is he doing? There he
Oh
goes.
no, he's reapplied it now. He's reapplied
To
news
the
to the
Neros.
Neros. But
Yeah,
a little
there
bit
we go.
too
I was
late.
waiting for
That
it too.
Brutix Navy has clawed back over half of its hit points. They're trying to
The
go
Oneros
for
needs
the
to start repping
Vindicator here, but too
Kiatsi
little
now.
too late.
He's going to start repping Kiatsi now. There you go. See some reps onto the Vindicator. Beautiful, good timing there. At this point, this is now Ancient's game. They've got the DPS. They've got enough control left. They've got their Logi holding strong. There's nothing this Balgorn can do. The Balgorn can nuke one of these ships out, maybe even with guns on it. But at this point, he's kind of screwed. As this team is now pulling back into the match. I love this. This was so well flown. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos.
Yeah, loving seeing all the Noir mercenaries and former Noir alums here on the Ancients team absolutely carrying the day here with superior piloting. As you would
There's
expect
also some,
from Eve's
NPSI
longest running
pilots as well.
mercenary corps.
There's some NPSI parts here as well from EBWF Funink. So it's good to see. I love
Thierry
seeing these
got
guys
one last
fly
burst
and,
of armor, but he's about to drop, and there he goes.
There he goes. And that's
And
honestly
with
it. There's
that,
nothing they
the
can
hope
do.
of Wormageddon for carrying this match.
That was chaos. That was beautiful. And of course, I'm always happy to see a Vindicator win, let's be honest.
Yeah,
Best ship in the
Kiaka
game,
is
baby.
standing strong.
I think so far today, 100% win rate for Vindicator, right?
Yep.
Oh, well, hopefully it stays that
And
way.
now with that
I'm
Balgorn
hoping.
out, he is able to pull back even more armor. The Brutix Navy issue still taking some fire, likely from the Nurgle, which, like I said, packs an incredible punch. But he just got absolutely nuked. He is gone. The Magus is zipping around, attempting to stay alive, but is now drawing the attention of a big flight of drones as the Skybreaker and Magus live to win, or attempt to. We've got 2 minutes left and a lot of ground to cover in this match. They are probably going to die as this Magus is now catching a lot of damage from the drones. Magus is not exactly known for their speed, Wingnut.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a Magus fast, but it's not normally the smart thing to do. But yeah, there was so many drones. I saw at least 3 ships with smart bombs removing drones. Everyone kind of knew what was coming. Like, they even brought a Balgorn, which is, like I said, pretty much the perfect Vindicator counter. And it was just a brawling chaos. And yet, yeah, the Vindicator comes up on top because the Vindicator is the best ship.
I'm not going to disagree with you. It's one of my favorites. It's been a long time favorite. One of the ships I dreamed to be able to get in when I was a young noob growing up in Syndicate. Now the Skybreaker's trying to take some damage. It's going to be dropping relatively quickly here, although it is a fairly low sig ship, so it may last a little bit. Unfortunately, it is not fit for maximum speed, and the drone cloud has caught up to it, and it drops as we throw this back to the desk.
Well-timed advert there for Funink, of course, led up by Kiakte, who was in that match there with the Ancients. They secured themselves a place in Alliance Tournament 19 at the expense of Wormageddon. Wormholers still struggling to get on the board here today. It has not been a good couple of matches for the Wormhole Collective in New Eden. So maybe they can turn it around. We have a couple of more matches later on which feature Wormholes. We will see No Vacancies coming along, so perhaps they can carry that torch for all of Wormhole kind and secure the first of the W's for the Wormhole guys. That would be super cool. Now let's go back and look at that last match. First of all, we saw the choice to go 3 battleships versus 2 battleships. One team had the opportunity to bring cruiser logic. The other side, they didn't have enough points by choosing that 3rd battleship. They had to go with logistics frigates instead. Mystical Might, what do you think about this decision here? Do you favor the extra power of that 3rd battleship, or do you favor the stronger logistics cruiser?
In this case, I favor the stronger logistics cruiser over the 2 frigates. There were a number of things that we typed in the production channel based on that match. The first thing that I typed was actually Aneros plus 2 battleships versus Double Deacon 3 battleships. Who dies first, right? Theoretically, 3 battleships does more damage than 2 battleships. Theoretically. But with the 2 battleships, you also get the Brudix Navy issue, you get the Exec Navy issue, you get the Thorax, and you get stronger reps, which means that essentially you're adding up to a 3rd battleship between those other 3 ships. And if you're focusing damage onto the same target, you should win the rep race between the Aneros and the Double Deacons. Now, I think the Ancients could have made their match a lot simpler by switching to the Deacons at the beginning with the Vindicator Webs. I was flaming them a little bit in the back channels for not doing so earlier. And right after I did, they decided to swap and actually delete 2 Deacons, which made trading a lot easier later on. So there were a number of ways that the Ancients could have made it easier for themselves, but I think ultimately they were in a better position to win just because they had the Aneros to begin with.
Yeah, also, when you see the 2 Deacons and then one of them just got skunked at one point and disappeared, that last remaining Deacon is essentially kind of useless. It doesn't rep that much. He has very limited range, and if he gets in about his buddies to rep them, then he's also probably going to get killed. And obviously, that's just a pilot that's now no longer, really be able to contribute much to the match. Jintan, obviously, the rep range for logistics frigates is a lot less. They're a lot less tanky. They do have good signature radius. Are there good scenarios where actually picking 2 logistics frigates is better than picking that logistics cruiser?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw that in the previous match, not the one that we just watched, but the game that was, I believe, Brave Collective versus Kitchen Sinkhole. If you are facing an opponent where you've either banned out or you just don't expect them to be bringing a good support core due to what you've seen from them in the past or their bans or something similar to that, bringing a logistics frigate can allow you to put more power into your setup and also prevent your logistics from being destroyed through some conventional manners. For example, if you expect your opponents to be bringing Kingslayer, throwing out 3 rapid heavy missile ships with the pure intent of killing off your logistics cruiser and using that to snowball an advantage and momentum, then bringing logistics frigates and preventing that from having the same impact on your team, even if you're not going to enable your logistics frigates to survive, can put you in such a good position moving forwards against an opposing team.
The other thing, Jintan, I wanted to ask you about is we heard the casters talking about it in that last match. The gun bow. Talk to me about the gun bow.
So the gun bow, well, whether or not to put guns on your Balgorn is a long-standing kind of theory crafting debate between various teams. think it's generally like the higher a team is, the more likely you are to see a bow with no guns fit on it used. And lower down in the ranks, you're probably going to see more teams where the captain wants to be able to have an immediate impact and leverage. For example, if it's a flagship bow, those wonderful, wonderful offers guns, which make you feel incredibly special and powerful when you're putting out 1,000 DPS and 1,000 gigajoules of a second of nuke power. Oh, it's a powerful feeling. But it's not quite as powerful as putting out 2,000 gigajoules a second of nuke pressure, unfortunately, which can turn off basically everything in a 50-kilometer radius of you if you're flying a Balgon properly.
Sure, there's a joke to be made about turning off everything within a 50-kilometer radius of you, but I shall refrain.
They try.
Let's look forward to our next match, which I am actually quite excited for. The Initiative versus Paper Numbers. Mystical Might. Paper Numbers, tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, their numbers, paper, pretty good. No, I think they are favored over the Initiative by some of the rankings that we did in the last stream. I'm trying to remember exactly who is in Paper Numbers. I'm trying to remember if this was who the corps are. Oh, this is Riferson's team, right? This is why Wingnut loves them so much. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Wingnut picked them, so they're out. It's fine. Initiative's going to win this one, I'm sure.
Some hard-hitting analysis there from Mystical Might of Fraternity. Let's look at the bans for the Initiative versus Paper Numbers. I see here the Initiative banning out the Balgorn and the Nighthawk. I'm questioning the look of this Balgorn hull, but the word does say Balgorn. And then the Paper Numbers team banning out the Curse and the Sleipnir. Jintan, what do you think of these bans here? We just talked about the Balgorn, but the Initiative can't bring it.
I'm not sure it actually says Balgon. I think that actually says Balgon. There's no R and an N there, as far as I can tell. So it's an entirely new ship. The Initiative, they're not content with just banning ships that their opponents might use. They're telling them to not use ships that they might not have heard of. They're bringing up CCP employees, being like, "Yeah, we're going to need to ban this ship that we're going to release in 2 months, just in case they might be ahead of it." That's how far ahead of the meta that Paper Numbers is. They're using ships that no one else has access to.
Yeah, they're trying to say this Balgon will be Balgorn, but they messed it up, and I'm going to assume it's still a valid ban. I think we get the intent that they're trying to ban a Balgorn. I assume the Initiative will eventually learn how to spell the ship names, but luckily we can sense intent and we'll allow them to have this ban. Mystical Might, what do you think this match is going to look like based on these bans?
It looks like if they ban the Balgorn on the Initiative side plus the Nighthawk, then it seems like they want to prevent themselves being pinned down by something that's extremely difficult to kill with the Balgorn because it has projected webs. But they also don't want to deal with a high shield rush damage comp like you would see with the Nighthawks or the Sleipnirs. I think it's going to be fairly interesting to see what they bring. I expect it's going to be a rush comp, like a Galente rush comp, I think is probably what they'll aim for. Something that would have a difficult time killing a Nighthawk because of the native thermal and kinetic resists. So they would be outdamaged by the Nighthawk, and something that would be difficult to get past a Balgorn because it's tanky, it newts, and it webs. So I'm going to lean towards Galente rush for the Initiative here.
Galente Rush will certainly be an interesting one. We don't see Galente Rush very often. We spoke about this earlier on a little bit. Back in the olden days of the Alliance Tournament, it was actually kind of common to see Galente Rush, which is basically just get as much blaster DPS as possible, approach F1, and then just hope for the best. A solid tactic that many of you nullsecers are very familiar with. Just approach F1 and hope. But it doesn't tend to work these days in the more advanced Alliance Tournament meta that we see. But it is time to head over to the arena and find out who shall win between the Initiative and Paper Numbers with our casters Baza and Chad Flame.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the arena. So looking at these two comps here, the thing that stands out to me is Rife-Ison. So if you're watching the draft show last week, you would have seen that Wingnut, he picked Paper Numbers because Rife-Ison loves to MJD battleships, basically. And from my experience with Paper Numbers, they're very good at one of two things. Either they're really good at Shield Kite, or they're really, really, really good at getting on Raiffeisen's back, and he just MJD straight into the middle of you. He finds the angle, and this is something that's so difficult to actually practice against. How are you gonna? You turn up with your scrim partner, like, so can you guys like field a comp with a battleship with an MJD, and can you like have him perfectly line up 100-kilometer MJD every time? Like, it's not something that you can actually practice against. They need to organically detect and figure out, try and steer away from Raiffeisen in this MJD Dominic's Navy.
As it seems, the Dami Navy is currently actually just pulling away from the fight, and probably backing up to a line to get an MJD. That would be. I love seeing MJD plays to start the match, but we see a Blackbird instantly going down in the low armor, and a Talia gone on the side of the initiative. Instantly low ends getting chunked by both teams.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the right way for paper numbers to play this. They have the range on these medium gun hulls here, the Brutix Navy, the Harbinger Navy, the Prophecy Navy. They've got decent range, they've got decent projection and application. They were able to just wipe out the Thalia. The Blackbird is kind of holding, and they don't really see the need to be engaged in a brawl with these two Leshaks. For Init, it's going to need to they need to tackle something down, and I think it needs to be on the exec navies to be pushing in here and try and tackle something if they have tackle. But I can see Midi Fogan sitting way back. I don't see the other exec navy pushing in either, so paper numbers are just going to kite away from these two Leshaks, obviously very, very slow.
And with that being said, a Celestis currently in the low armor about to get chunked. If that goes down, that is definitely going to help paper numbers be able to lock a lot farther and continue to kite out this game. As you said, they're doing really good. That Blackbird just seems to be being tunnel visioned. They really want to get rid of those gems. Maybe the ENIs can only shoot that, but it does seem like they need to start doing something like getting in on top of these battleships as soon as possible.
Yeah, but the big issue now is this Hyena is just totally controlling these Leshaks. Obviously, the ranged web's so powerful. The Leshaks are just trying to get into brawl, but obviously when they're both webbed by a Hyena, there's just no chance of that. They're being absolutely left in the dirt here by this paper numbers comp. Even the Dominic's Navy is just burning away from them. Raiffeisen is going to probably not even need to use his MJD strategy as, he's coming up pretty close in these exec Navy now. I expect to see him start pumping some newts into this exec Navy of Caxton, turning off the guns, turning off the hardeners, and he may be dying fairly soon. I imagine the prop is going to go off as well. The Maller is on him of Arwen, and they are going to start pumping through Caxton here as he's tackled.
Yeah, I noticed the Arbitrator does not seem to be using any weapon disruption. Probably expected missiles, brought missiles, and went all in, hoping that they could win some sort of rock, paper, scissors here. As the Hyena and Blackbird just seem to be the target back and forth, and then nothing is actually seeming to break, while the Initiative is losing yet another one of their ships in this exec navy.
Yeah, my advice to any team who's thinking of stacking all your TDs or GDs on an arbitrator and sort of gambling, especially in a two-band scenario, like you've seen the bands, right? You see Balgorn, Nighthawk, Sleipnir Curse. Is that really enough to say they're going to bring missiles? Everything they bring is missiles. Because if they had, one or two TDs in this matchup, they can stick the TDs on the Harbinger Navy, the Brutish Navy.
It does look like they actually do have TDs. They do have some TDs.
They do.
Now
they
that
do
the
have some
Blackbird
TDs.
is down, the Arbitrator is able to put some on. The Blackbird was probably just passively jamming the Arbitrator on and off.
Yeah, I think the Celestis or Blackbird probably had the Arbitrator controlled, and that was why he wasn't doing it. Because, I would have been very surprised to see that based on the information available. That would have been a very bold move from Initiative.
That would have been a really questionable call, I guess.
Yeah. But we are still just seeing the control of this paper numbers comp. They did lose the Blackbird there, but the Hyena is just keeping everything at bay here. Paper numbers doing a really great job of sort of burning away. They stop their ships, they park up, they get good tracking on something, they get something tackled, they blap it, and then they keep moving again. And these Leshaks are just constantly chasing, and it's so fruitless. And I think this is one of the main weaknesses of these double Leshak comps, is that if you come up against something that you haven't caught at the start and doesn't want to be in range of you and is happy to just kite away, it's very, very difficult to spend those points on something that can, help you get in range while also not just getting killed itself.
I 100% agree with that. The Deacon goes down. It looked like paper numbers was having a little bit of application problems. Not that Arbitrator was opened up and everything was tanking, but with that Deacon going down and the Arbitrator soon to fall, it looks like it's just going to be cleaning up for paper numbers. But the Hyena did go down, so maybe those Leshaks can actually get on top for a last-second hope to do their massive amount of spool damage and turn this match around. But it's going to take some really good piloting and tackling by that exact Magus and Ponti.
Yeah, I'm not sure that these cruisers are going to be fast enough compared to the Leshaks to actually get out of their gun range. They are pumping through CEO. He has got some bots on him as well. Those are actually enemy damage bots, Acolytes, some more Acolytes coming in here. He is taking chunks from these two Leshaks, and he can't really get away now the Hyena's gone down. I think Captain Shinken's saying, well, you're dead, buddy. I need to get out of here. He's going to try and burn away before the Leshaks look at him the wrong way as well. CEOs is going to go
it's
down
interesting.
here. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does go down. It's interesting to see that. Hopefully, Parkbank and the exec starts doing some Parkbank things and being Logi MVP, as a lot of people know him. But at under 2 Lesheks, you can't really do a ton in that ENI other than try to buy as much time as possible to burn through one of these Lesheks and survive. That's about all you can do.
Yeah, the thing with the exec is in this matchup, you know the Leshaks are going to be pumping something. They want to spool on it, right? So you put all your reps on whatever they're spooling on, and that's kind of it. You know, you can't really do much more. You can obviously manage your heat. You can heat some cycles, try and keep them alive to the best of the ability, but they're not going to be swapping targets. They're not going to be switching to try and volley something.
Exactly.
They are just going to be spooling and pumping through it. And Captain Shinken, he is not really holding here. He's at a reasonable range from the Leshaks, but I don't think he's fast enough to actually get out of the gun range in time here. I think he might go down. It's kind of hard to tell. They are just burning in a straight line towards each other, away from each other, so he's not going to have transversal. The Leshaks are going to be able to track him fine, and we are seeing him take chunks, but he needs to turn at some point. He's getting kind of close to the arena.
Yeah, getting cornered by those Lesheks. Honestly, a massive tournament event in piloting by the top end over here in Initiative. It just seems like they're cornering the Paper Numbers team against the edge and just allowing these Lesheks to do work, which is what they wanted to do earlier in the match. That E-War from Paper Numbers took a while to die, and that is what has got them to this point. But now that the Lesheks are free to do what they want, it seems like they are dominating the Paper Numbers team whenever they get close enough to do that.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, sorry, it's easy late in the match for Parkbank, but early on in the match, for sure, he deserves props for keeping his E-War wing alive so long. Excuse me. And now we see Captain Shinken is actually holding here because this Leshak of Darkshines, one of the 2 Leshaks who was obviously in hot pursuit of Captain Shinken, has just been tackled down by the Magus. I think it was the Pontifex actually who caught him first, and the Dominavia of Raiffeisen rolls up.
They just did a switch onto the Dominavia.
They have switched onto the Dominavia, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Darkshines is still going to go down first.
Looks like.
Yeah, I think they're so split apart that they have no choice. Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't really have let the Leshaks get split up so hard. Perhaps maybe they should have said, one of them's tackled, the other one needs to stop so that we can
get
keep
over to
shooting
me
the same
and
thing.
let's finish this target. Yeah.
But instead,
And,
it looks like
and
now
with that
it is
Leshek down, I don't know if
lucky.
they have the DPS to break through the reactor spool plus Parkbank's Logi skills. I do not think they're going to be able to break through any of these ships. It did look like they were about to claw back from the depths of just getting destroyed by Kite, but it does not look like they were able to fully pull back because of that splitting up the Lesheks. Good part on Paper Numbers to split those Lesheks up to stop the double spool damage.
Yeah, for sure. I think some credit is deserved by Initiative for choosing to get rid of that hyena when they could. They saw an opportunity to maybe stick some DPS drones on it, maybe blap it with the Navy Execurals. Killing them off that hyena was sort of what allowed them to get back into this match, to get those Leshaks in hot pursuit of those battle cruisers and start putting the damage into them. If they'd maybe been able to do that a little bit sooner, maybe they could have got through Shink and started on Maddox. But just good control from Paper Numbers. You see this double Leshak comp, and they read it perfectly. They know exactly what it needs to do. It needs to charge into, and as long as you can keep them at bay, you probably have the upper hand here.
Yeah, they wasted so much time in the beginning of that match thanks to that hyena and low E-War end that they were able to get that advantage on the low end, which definitely made a difference in this late game. Paper Numbers still having all of that, low end surviving way longer made a massive difference. Now, that match almost did turn once Paper Numbers low end and control wing basically vanished. It just was slightly too late, I would say. Maybe a few piloting mistakes and or Giga Chad piloting by the Paper Numbers team that really helped them win. But that low end was the key to that match for both teams if it was going to live or die.
Yeah, I think the control at the start of that match was just debilitating for them. You've only got 4 DPS ships in that comp. When you come up against that kind of control, it's very easy to just spread the E-War and make it very, very difficult to actually have any meaningful impact. As Rocky in this last Leshak is going to go down, I think, before time. He is slowly bleeding through hull here. And this is quite an interesting look from Paper Numbers. We've seen plenty of medium gun spam comps. We haven't really seen like a Navy Domi +3 battle cruiser and then control. It's kind of a slightly different take on things as he gets in that massive bump at the end. Not an MJD, but an MWD play from Raiffeisen at the end there. That is going to be Paper Numbers stomping to a win, 100-36. We're going to send it back to the desk.
calculated victory there by paper numbers takes them into Alliance Tournament 19 proper. We will see no more of them as they go on. Meanwhile, Initiative now on the back foot as they will have to go through the gauntlet trying to find one of those remaining places. They had their chance, but unfortunately they could not pull it off in this case. Mystical Mike, we're seeing, like, it's early days yet, but we're seeing double the shacks. I feel like this happens every year. There's a subset of teams who just continue to think, hey, double the shacks. And I don't have the stats to hand, but I'm sure if we looked at the stats from last year's double the shack comps, it was pretty poor in terms of win-loss. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of teams look at the Leshak. It has decent range, and it does a lot of damage, especially over time. So people see the Leshak, they see big number, and they think big number good. Sometimes it is. I would say that, to be fair to teams this year, the double Leshak comp suffers less than it would have last year, because E-War is now limited to ships that have the bonuses for them. So previously, where you would have seen Jackdaws, with like tracking disruptors or damps or something like that, which really hurts Leshak because it doesn't have a fall-off bonus. Once it's out of its optimal range, it stops spooling. So one of the key ways that you can deal with a Leshak is to break its lock, or to break its spool by limiting how far it can shoot and then keeping range. That can happen less this year because you can actually ban the ships that are designed to stop you from spooling a little bit more effectively than you could last year. However, playing the Leshak still requires you to use your brain. The Initiative lacked initiative when it came to dealing with the comp that they were going up against, because they allowed the Leshaks to get split towards the end of the match, with one Leshak chasing off after a Brudix Navy issue that ended up MJDing away from it, and Darkshines and the Leshak being stuck under the Dominic's Navy. If they'd stuck together and used their brains a little bit and just spooled on the Dominic's Navy to try and break the Dominic's Navy, or at least force it away, they may have had a better chance of pulling their match back a little bit. But I think they were really just hampered by the fact they had no tackle ships. So they had no way of pinning down the exec, or the execura, sorry. That was the logistics ship. So they had to constantly fight through the reps that were coming in, which they can because they're the shacks, but it's still not ideal or optimal.
Yeah, that was something I was actually going to bring up as well. Jintan, I think you mentioned it in the back channels. This is a great example of why you need tackle ships and support ships. The Initiative brought what I believe CCP Zealous called a Galenti jog. It wasn't so much a Galenti rush, but more of a Galenti jog. And we saw a bunch of E-War ships, but really nothing in that tackle and support wing. Why do you think that was a mistake, and what do you think they could have maybe swapped around a bit?
It was clearly a mistake. I wouldn't want to sit here and try and rebuild their comp from the ground up. But we saw it, especially later on in the match. There just was no one able to screen for those Leshaks. They were walking out there and just getting grabbed by anyone. Any ship could tackle down a Leshak. There was no little frigate to sit there and hold on to the Dominic's Navy issue and stop it from glomping onto whoever their lead Leshak pilot was. I can't remember the name right now. Which was what forced that weird point in the end game where they were both spooling on different things, and the executor was able to very happily just sit there and keep the both of them alive. Really, what I want to actually talk about though is the paper numbers comp, because I think that's a bit more indicative of the meta that we're going to see going forwards. They weren't quite a medium gun span style team, but you still saw, I think, 6-7 threats on that composition. There were 6 or 7 threats that could go out there and kill an opposing cruiser, or do significant damage to an opposing battle cruiser. And that feels to me like what the meta is edging towards. Teams bringing a lot of big hitters and, a small amount of tackle, which can help them get into their right position. Because the low end of points the points of the low end ships have gone down and the cost of the high end ships have gone up. So you can get so much more value if you get those 9-7 point ships somewhere into your composition.
Yeah, especially in this opening round, it is super interesting to see how much of an accurate meta read we will start to get, because some of these teams are going to go pretty much all in to try and secure that first most important win. So to to reiterate the way that this feeder round works is if you win your first match, you're into Alliance Tournament 19. You need do no more until the main tournament itself. That is it. It is 10 minutes to prove your mettle, and you're straight through. 28 spots exist in the Alliance Tournament. 24 of them will be decided in this first round. That means if you lose, you're going into this brutal gauntlet for those remaining 4 slots. That's terrible. Like you go from basically a 50% chance to suddenly maybe like a 3 or 4% chance. Now, let's not say it never happens. Odin's Call last year had a fantastic run through the feeders, dropping into the final, sort of the equivalent of the Galente Gamble last year, taking somewhere like 7 or 9 matches to get through into the main tournament, and then cruised all the way up to second place in the main event. It was a spectacular run, and I think still should probably hold the record for the most number of matches played in a single Alliance tournament. It was pretty phenomenal. Unfortunately for them, they only got skins for the main tournament, not the feeders. Otherwise, they'd have been very happy. But yeah, going all in at this stage in round 1, there has to be something to that, Mystical Might. How big do your balls have to be to say, let's not go all in because we think we could win with something a little bit sneaky?
I think it's just a good balance of knowing how good your team is versus how good the team you're going up against is. Not to throw shade on any teams, but if you're going up against a team like, I don't know, Snuffed out, I guess, in this particular example, based on what they brought today, maybe you don't need to be bringing like the one comp that you're reserving for the finals, right? Because it's not a finals match. It's just one of the matches that you would have to win anyway in the run up to the finals. So depending on the confidence you have in your team and how many comps you've practiced, you will have a good set of core comps that you will be able to bring out against almost any team and feel fairly comfortable in your chance of winning, right? In the odds going in your favor. You'll tweak that a bit based on how well you know their meta, so based on the ships that they're bringing to their matches. But I would say most teams should be reserving some of their better comps for the actual main tournament, especially in this first match. I want them to bring good comps because it makes their life so much easier to just get in now. But later on in the feeders bracket, where they are at risk of being eliminated, that's when I expect to see some of the doomsday comps coming out, because if they lose, then what really have they lost in showing a good comp?
Yeah, awesome. It's going to be interesting. Now, I'm just looking at Twitch, and it seems that this next matchup between Sugar and Deepwater Hooligans has a clear favorite. Deepwater Hooligans, over 1 million channel points on them, whereas only 110,000 on Sugar. Lots of posting a boat to help Deepwater float. We will certainly see if they can float or if they sink. But let's take a look at what they are banning. Deepwater Hooligans banning out the Nighthawk and the Typhoon Fleet issue. Meanwhile, from Sugar, we're seeing Scorpion Navy issue and a Barguest. Interesting bans here. We don't have a huge amount of time to talk about it because I see the teams have landed in the arena. So let us head over to the arena for Deepwater Hooligans versus Sugar with Alec and Wingnut.
G'day, mates. Welcome back to the arena. And I feel like people aren't really hearing the message of double a shack isn't really worth it. But I also feel like someone's copying someone else's homework and just changing just a little bit so they don't get caught, because there's a lot of similarities going on here. What are you thinking, Alec? Oop. Alec? Alec? Yay, I killed him. All right, this is all me then.
No,
It was me all along. I murdered Alec.
alive.
I got him.
Double a shack left me speechless for a second. Deepwater electing to bring in a Neros versus Sugar electing to counter it with a curse. Interesting.
Exactly that. Like I said, it's
trade. But
it's like they had the same idea and one copied the other one. They just changed just a little bit. It'll be a very interesting match. That curse is going to pull his weight, and so is the Oneros.
yeah, I feel like the curse will give longer term value if it can survive. But against double a shacks, that is a far from certain outcome here. As we see the match beginning to go underway, Deepwater Hooligans beginning to kite away very slowly. That
Sugar's just
Lashak
going,
of
"Leroy!"
Jurgenau
charging in.
is just hanging around.
Both the sacks
that
just
me?
charging in from Sugar, just sending it, and I love it. Their team's a bit behind, but that's fine. Just go in there. What are we going for? We're
Yeah,
going for a
why is that
Lashak. Okay,
Lashak
sure.
taking its time there? Maybe after burning Lashaks versus micro warp drive Lashaks? Is that what's happening here?
If, I, I mean, I can't say you shouldn't fit an afterburner, but I really think you should not fit an afterburner to battleships, mate. You might as well get out and paddle. You'll be going about as fast. But yeah, damage is coming.
What
This is going to be a
glorious
DPS race.
innovations
Lashak
are we
versus Lashak.
seeing?
Look at the drones all popping up. E-War drones, Logi drones. Absolute chaos going on here. ECM drone is going to be particularly annoying for Lashaks. They break that spool even once. That could end this match immediately.
Yeah, I think tellingly, Deepwater Hooligans has a bigger cloud of maintenance bots around their Lashak, and then we're starting to see the benefits of that as Vera's Lashak on Sugar is beginning to dip below half armor, pulling it back rather slowly.
Well, they've only got a Deacon and a Thalia for Logi. Meanwhile, the other side has an Oneros, giving them the real rep power they need. So this is not looking good at the moment. Sugar might.
No,
maybe
Vera's under withering fire with no rep bots to show for it. He's now just got one set of heavies on him. Not looking great compared to the massive, massive cloud of maintenance bots surrounding Irganal right now. You can see the difference as the Lashak.
Not just that as well.
and
It's Logi
Thalia
drones
are dropping.
plus an Oneros. They've really invested on Logi here.
A much more potent combination of logistics than the double, now single logistics frigate on
Now
the side
sing-
of Sugar as their Thalia bites the dust.
We need to mention as well, the Navy Comet and Confessor are going to be a very brutal combo against small ships. You can see actually the Deacon now being shot down. You see the Comet and the Confessor going straight in for it. Yeah, that's a support wing is very aggressive. I love it.
Yeah, a bit of a Bash Brothers combination there. The Comet, especially, taking advantage of the points reduction here for this tournament, brings a ton of firepower for a relatively affordable amount of points.
Meanwhile, the other Confessor from the opposing side just took out the carries of Puppy, so that is...
They traded for a Lashak. Not great.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you got something. Congratulations. It's a shame that your comp is dead.
Yeah, with a single Lashak here, unless this curse starts to put in some work, they're really going to have some trouble here. But the curse is, well, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He has parked himself on top of the Aneros for Deepwater Hooligans, and he's putting as many newts in as possible. But it's not counting for much, as Irganal has been hanging tough with that cloud of maintenance bots, which do not rely on capacitor, and there's nothing cleaning them off right now. He still has quite a few.
One thing I'm surprised by, you've got Twin Lashak, right? You've got massive DPS, and you've obviously got utility hires. Neither team thought for a millisecond to put a smart bomb on. Now, like, maybe they maybe think they like their drones, but like, look what's going on here. If you have one smart bomb, that's how many ECM and rep drones gone in an instant. I feel like
and of the ships to put it on,
the
Lashak is an excellent choice. It even has a bonus for it, making them run more efficiently. But we're just not seeing them here. It looks like they've elected to go with neutralizer fits.
All the way, all the way.
I mean, good against other ships, but like Lashak versus Lashak, neutralizer versus neutralizer, you're just beating each other with the same stick. Unfortunately, Deepwater Hooligan's stick is quite a bit bigger as the remaining Sugar Lashak drops.
Stop making me cough. The Nearest is being hit at the moment, so is the Celestis, but they're just leaving these Lashaks alone now. They realize they just can't kill them. Go for something else. I'm trying not to cough. This is just... I was not expecting this match.
That has also received some critical hits. You need some logistics over there.
I've had some wrecking shots myself.
Unfortunately, Sugar, they're trying here. They're putting some damage into the Celestis. Unfortunately, they just don't have a lot of damage left. You've got the Confessor, which has just dropped. Their only remaining damage dealers are the Vexor and the Curse, and I guarantee you that Curse is now has been fit for as much tank as possible, so it's not putting out a lot of damage despite having a drone bonus. Now it looks like the
going for something they
Vexor
can
of
kill, but
Lorxon.
it's not going to matter. Like, all the things you
Yeah,
can kill going for the
unless they
Celestis
kill
with
that
your Vexor, I'm
Aneros,
not sure
but-
I agree with. Yeah, maybe they didn't go for the Comet with the Vexor or the Confessor or even the Ponty O'Malley and try and get rid of the links. But going for the Celestis, which at this point is doing basically nothing to you, because honestly getting up close isn't going to help you. Neither's getting kiting.
Their target pickings are a bit slim here. I mean, the play to try to win the match would be to go after the Aneros, but even with the Curse's neutralizers, I'm skeptical that the remaining amount of damage could punch through its tank. every time it has a cap booster up, it's going to be able to get a cycle or two of its repper in, and that itself might be enough to outlast the end of this match. But Sugar's not even going for it. They're trying to take out the Magus now, and it is easily getting repped up.
Yeah, whatever you can, I guess. But I got a question for you at the start, right? You've got two Lashaks and a Curse versus two Lashaks and Logi. Do you newt out one of the Lashaks with your Curse to try and remove DPS? Or do you newt out the Logi to try and win the race?
You've got to go for the Logi and try to win the race. I think it's your only play there. I don't know what the issue was. I think, honestly, the difference of the maintenance spots probably did it. But that Curse was just not able to effectively neutralize the Aneros fast enough. And the maintenance bots that Deepwater put out were enabling it to get that DPS race edge. And that's all they needed, was just a little edge. Make sure that their Lashak stayed up just slightly longer than Sugar's to enable them to snowball this match into a not quite, but nearly flawless victory, as the
And that's why
Curse
I
has
asked that.
finally become the remaining target here.
Yeah, and that's why I asked that as well, is because if you newt out one Lashak for a split second and break that cycle, that can also win your DPS race, but you got to make the decision and kind of commit to it. I didn't see the Curse do particularly much, so we'll have to see what the analyst desk thinks once this Curse finally gets what he deserves and absolutely explodes.
Yep, he's been tackled by
Ooh.
the Magus. We're now seeing damage drones, so the Deepwater Hooligans teams realize they don't need to rep anything. They've swapped out for damage to close this match out 100-5, sending this back to the desk.
Rain, are you in an armor vagabond or something?
No, I've got XLSP.
And polarized guns or what?
Kasich, you are one of two people that couldn't listen and couldn't check bookmarks and find your own way out. The route, the entire route was literally bookmarked out to Losec. I bookmarked it 10 minutes in advance!
Guys, stop being casual. They're really bad. We should not lose anybody to this. Warp off. Warp off. Take the fleet warp. Everybody warp off. This is really, really bad execution. I'm very disappointed.
Well, there you have it. Sugar caramelized in the Deepwater kitchen, 100-5. Pretty much a dismantling. It seemed to be a bit of a stalemate back and forth for a while at the start of that match. It was something like 3 minutes before the first ship started to go down, but once it did, the snowball was in full effect, as it was just a case of just bang, 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 one after the other. They all disappeared. The wormhole curse still very much in effect in this instance. That was another wormhole group, another big fat L. Mystical Might, what is there to say about this match?
I mean, it's just standard wormhole in an AT environment, I guess. You know, outside the wormholes, what can they do? We even put a wormhole on grid for them to make them feel more at home, and it's just not working. So I don't know really how we can help them through this bracket, these tough times. Mark does need your votes though, wormhole, so try your hardest. Thank you. In this match, I think that there was a bit of discussion in the background between myself and a few of the other analysts on what we thought would win, the triple damp that was brought by Deepwater Hooligans, or the damp and the curse that was brought by Sugar. There was the belief that the curse would be able to prevent one of the Lashaks from shooting beyond 12 kilometers, which is pretty reasonable to assume, but I believed that the triple damp that the Deepwater Hooligan team brought would prevent the curse from locking at all, and would also force the Sugar team to brawl in. In the end, we saw them decide to brawl anyway, and with the power of the Aneros behind the double Lashak, they were able to outlast the double Logifrig double Lashak. So again, just another matchup of the Logi Cruiser versus the Logistics Frigates, I think.
And one of the other interesting choices in that last match was because the comps were quite similar actually. Like when you look at them from a high level, they're quite the same. But we saw clearly a decision. One team bringing a curse, one team bringing in an Eros. Jintan, why do you think the decision to bring a curse maybe was made?
I mean, the Curse is just one of the most historically powerful ships in the Alliance tournament for what it does. So, first of all, you've got those bonus tracking disruptors and guidance disruptors. Those allow you to neutralize one or two of your opponent's ships as long as they are, ships that rely on projecting from range and just turn them off. Or in this case, with a couple of the Lashaks, they were able to take one of them and just completely remove them from the picture until the curse itself started coming under trouble. But what makes the curse so powerful is not just those tracking disruptors. If it was just that, it would basically be a Sentinel's bigger, badder daddy. But it's even worse than that because of the newts that it has access to. Those things are incredibly potent, and they can not only turn off a logistics frigate very easily, they can also make very good work at logistics cruisers and pretty much any cruiser, really. And between that, it allows it to basically shield itself. It can, if it sees a destroyer coming in to try and tackle it, it can just reach out with a newt and tell it to go away, and it will leave it dead in space for its friends to come and swarm all over. At least that was the game plan. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't really turn out that well. Those newts weren't very effective. They weren't able to utilize them to, disrupt the tackle that was ending up kind of sticking around their Lashaks and stopping them from getting into position. And really, I just don't think we saw the full potential of the curse come out in that match. Maybe if they'd used it a little better, they could have won.
Maybe we'll never know. Well, we might know because we will see Sugar again, as they're still in, of course, the Galenti gamble. They have to try and make their way through a brutal series now. Maybe they get into the tournament. Maybe they redeem their Space Bushido. In terms of wormholers, we have the match coming up after the break. It is No Vacancies versus DarkSide. This, I think, is going to be an extremely interesting match. DarkSide, legendary team with some incredible pilots. No Vacancies have done had some pretty good success occasionally in the Alliance tournament. So I think this is a team that DarkSide cannot count on just an easy win. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. But that will be in about 20-30 minutes. We are going to go to a short break. So stick around, enjoy the music, and we'll see you then. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys can hear that music, but that was a phenomenal return to form right here on Alliance Tournament 19 feeder rounds. Day one. We have already seen a bunch of teams secure their way straight into Alliance Tournament 19. We've seen some people stumble at that first step and move into the Galenti gamble. The teams that have progressed thus far are Goonswarm Federation, Platinum Sensitivity, Brave Collective, the Ancients, Paper Numbers, and Deepwater Hooligans. So those teams have secured that spot in Alliance Tournament 19. We'll see them in August. For the rest of the teams, it is still anyone's game. We're still very much in the win it and you're in set for today for this next match between DarkSide and No Vacancies. But you may have noticed I am joined by two fresh faces to welcome to the stage the Basilisk and Moderator. Baza, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm very hot, coming to you very hot from middle of England. So I've got the fan on. Thankfully, it's not being picked up by the stream. But yeah, I'm good. I've enjoyed it so far. It's been good.
Awesome, hot and modest. And of course, we have a moderator. Well, he's not busy running around muting people's streams. He is here to entertain us and tell us wise words about these matches. Mod, how are you today?
Excellent. It's a great day for spaceships to explode.
It's always a great day for spaceships to explode. Every single day is a good day for spaceships to explode. Is there any matches so far that you've seen in the feeders today that have had your favorite explosions, moderator?
Nuke Michael's rapid heavy missile launchers were probably my favorite explosion when those burnt out. But in all seriousness, I liked a lot of the kind of the very heavy commit brawl matches that we've seen so far. They've been entertaining to watch, maybe not the most on point of compositions, but they've been enjoyable so far.
And what about you, Baza? Any highlights? We've seen a couple of matches. It's still early days, but any good ones so far?
Yeah, I've quite liked the Goons one. The Goons one versus Snuffed out at the start, apart from Nuke Michael's guns burning out. I think from Snuffed, it was quite a sort of ambitious entrance into the Alliance Tournament feeder rounds to field a comp that's so difficult to execute to its highest potential. Yeah, so I like to see them try it, but I'm also kind of happy to see them, sorry, Maud, but fall on their face a little bit.
Awesome. Now let's look forward to our next match, DarkSide versus No Vacancies. I'm excited for this one. I think we have the bans. Let's see if we can take a quick look at those. So DarkSide choosing to ban the Scimitar and the Balgorn, while No Vacancies banning out the Scimitar and the Blackbird. And we have our first trickle ban. So both teams banning the Scimitar as one of their first two bans. These bans are done blind to each other. Because there's a duplicate, each team gets an additional free ban. DarkSide banning out the Varga, recently buffed in the Viridian expansion, and the Talia. Moderator, what do you think of these bans?
Yeah, usually when we see scimitars getting banned out, it's to get rid of kind of long range shield kitey setups. So our traditional kind of long range artillery fly killer with rapid heavies, rapid lights, getting those out of the way. And we see a Balgorn ban as well from DarkSide, not wanting to get controlled. But that looks like a Tempest, so we'll have to maybe talk to production about that. What do you think, Bowser?
Yeah, I think that's another fat finger on the Balgorn key rather than the Balgorn key. But yeah, I sort of agree with your takes generally on the bans. The Simi in this format where you've only got 2 bans, it's quite hard to sort of specifically ban out an entire comp and say we don't want to face this. You've got very limited. Like there's so much replaceability in the comps that your opponents might field that it's very difficult to narrow it down that much. So going for the Simi is probably the single most effective way to try and deal with Shield Kite if that's what you don't want to see.
Yeah, I'm looking at what's landed on grid here, and it looks like it should be a spicy match. So let's hand over to the arena for DarkSide versus No Vacancies with your casters Blackbart Pirate and Chad Flame.
Welcome to the arena. I am Chad Flame here with Blackbart Pirate to cast you the DarkSide versus No Vacancies. DarkSide bringing a Nighthawk, Loki, Fleet Cyclone, Onyx Cerberus, Navy Caracal Bifrost, Double Logi Frigate, and a Jackdaw. Blackbart, would you like to go through the No Vacancies team?
I will go through the No Vacancies side. They're bringing actually a very similar setup with a Nighthawk, Sleipnir, Fleet Cyclone, Navy Drake, Osprey, Navy Caracal, Navy Executor, Jackdaw, Sweeple, and Flycatcher. Interesting to note, all of these ships are fit with hams and close-range weapons with the exception of the No Vacancies. Navy Executor, I guess they weren't Chad enough to run the blasters. Seeing an awesome shot with that wormhole in the background right there. Props to our cameraman. I believe that these are, at least one of these teams is considered to be one of the last wormhole hopes for Mark Resurrectus here.
Yeah, as we saw earlier today, a lot of those wormhole teams taking a L, and we will be seeing them play against each other later today, hoping that one of them can redeem themselves, but one of them will also be eliminated. As that said, the match counting down, and Link's about to go up any second now. What's your predictions for the start of this match, Blackbart?
Honestly, my predictions is there's going to be a lot of people going down very fast. It should be quite a quick match with we're seeing massive amounts of heavy missile damage or heavy assault missile damage, and both teams are ramming straight into each other. Very, very, very strong, powerful tactic right here. A lot of damage going on to the Navy Caracal of No Vacancies first, which is a very good target, probably one of the easiest ships to kill there. That being said, seeing a lot of webs and stuff going on to Skykiller Russian is Loki from DarkSide.
Yeah, it just looks like they're just trying to get rid of that control. Not really like it's going to make a massive difference other than for application purposes. As that Navy Caracal goes down instantly, the Osprey not able to keep it up. Drake Navy looks to be like the next primary for DarkSide.
The Drake Navy is taking damage. The Jackdaw is also taking a little bit of damage. It's getting a sort of solo PvP'd a bit in the back there by the Bifrost, which is something you don't usually hear every day. But yeah, that Drake Navy is dropping way faster. Skykiller Russian may go down here, but if that Drake Navy goes down before Skykiller Russian, like that's already 2 major DPS ships that are about to be off the field on the No Vacancy side, and they really don't have anything to show for it. As the Navy Drake goes down, Skykiller Russian is still holding in very low shield, maybe coming back a little bit.
I don't think he's going to be able to come back, but you're at this point trading away 2 top-end DPS ships. Now it's going to be 3 because this exact Navy's already out of shield for a Loki. What an amazing trade done by this DarkSide team.
Yeah, it's this is the first time we've seen Shield Rush for this tournament. Also, the first time we've seen Shield Rush versus Shield Rush for this tournament. And it seems that DarkSide is taking kind of an older meta and just absolutely crushing through No Vacancies, who brought a similar setup, but is now 4 ships down with that Jackdaw dropping. No Vacancies trying to take a Fleet Cyclone down, doing a pretty decent job. There's still quite a bit of damage out on the No Vacancies side, but DarkSide just seems to have a lot more control. They're now wiping out that lower end, taking out that Sviple, taking out that Jackdaw, probably going to go for the Flycatcher next. All very, very high DPS ships here. Fleet Cyclone to DarkSide is actually barely holding here still. That those scalpels and Kieran on DarkSide are just doing an incredible job of just slowing down the amount of damage they take. And Fern might actually live longer than Rain here.
It noted that you said that Smolin just dying. They just don't have the EHP for the Osprey to catch reps on them, it seems, versus these top-end ships are catching Osprey reps, which is doing slightly more than that Logi frigate. But they're doing a good job as well, as we actually see the No Vacancies Typhoon fleet go down, or Cyclone fleet go down first.
It does appear that Fern may actually survive this. So we're seeing very, very slow structure bleed here as the Flycatcher drops. There's now only a Sleipnir and a Nighthawk, which, to be fair, quite a lot of damage. But somehow the Cyclone fleet is holding on as DarkSide swaps over and begins wrecking this Sleipnir. Sleipnirs do have an incredibly high amount of shield self-tank, but we've said it before, once those ASB charges go out, it'll drop. At this point, it's pretty obvious that DarkSide has won. It's more, is DarkSide going to win with only losing a single ship? And it looks like that might be a possibility here.
It does, because the Fleet Cyclone of DarkSide has pulled out of that fight and is now out of the range of that Sleipnir and Nighthawk that are currently being held down, webbed, and scrammed. And it does not like they're going to be able to finish the job and have to switch targets and lose all their progress that they put into that Fleet Cyclone.
And it does seem that No Vacancies has decided to maybe try and take the Scalpel down, but I mean, that's way too little too late. I think that Fern got a ancillary shield booster reload off or something and was able to kind of bring themselves back from the brink of destruction. Zax, on the other hand, appears to be out of ASB charges. His bleeding armor right now is about to go into structure and will blow up. I say that as a single little shield drop gets off, but there they go. Fern is still alive, sitting in 37% structure. DarkSide is going after the Osprey right now. Good fights in local are starting to go out. And I really think that the target calling right off the rip there was so huge. We saw DarkSide just do a completely different strategy than No Vacancies did. Chad, was there anything that No Vacancies maybe could have done to pull this off?
I think there's two ways you could look at it. They either need to go DarkSide having a lot of T2 and T3 resists, helping them tank a lot longer, maybe getting damage off the grid in some of those T1 hulls, such as the Fleet Cyclone or the Caracal. The other option is using some of those small end ships like the Svitbull, Flycatcher to maybe do some work on their Logi frigates. They have to be right in the fight as well. You might be able to get one of those down and stop them from repping. I think those T2 resists really won DarkSide the match because they were able to tank so well being primaried.
Absolutely. Going after the Loki, which is probably one of the more difficult ships to kill, may not have been the best idea. The Osprey goes down, and DarkSide is finishing off the Nighthawk last, generally considered to be one of the most difficult ships in the game to take down, but it actually blew up almost instantly, so maybe it was paper tanked. We will leave all of that analysis back to the squad on the desk.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew.
Pop out of the pot. Farmer's bar could be anywhere.
Well, it looks like there are no vacancies in the main tournament at this point for Novak, as they will have to face the Galente Gamble to see if they can secure one of the remaining four places, having just dropped that match. DarkSide, of course, lighting up the arena with explosions there in a pretty comfortable match. DarkSide, an incredibly experienced team. I believe they're captained by Faffy Waffy, who's a long-time tournament pilot, super good at what he does, and we have some pilots in there like Pandy, who've come from Vidra Reloaded, a 2-time AT winning team. Incredible amounts of talent in that DarkSide team this year, so I'm very excited to see how they go. Moderator, what do you think of No Vacancies' decision to primary the Loki of DarkSide at the start of that match?
Yeah, it felt like a lot of that match pivoted, like you're saying, off of the choice of primaries. No Vacancies choosing to go for the Loki. Yes, it's a lot of points. It's some of the control in terms of webs, but DarkSide made the better call to go after those very low tank but very high damage glass cannon, Navy Caracal, Navy Executor, and ultimately that swung the match for them pretty hard early on.
Yeah, and Basis, what do you think in general about bringing a Loki? It's not a ship we see very common. In general, Tech 3 cruisers, not seen very often in the Alliance Tournament, not since the demise, of course, of the Tinker comps, when you used to be able to fit logistics to your Tech 3 cruiser and just ball up, feed remote cap to that thing and just rip the heck out of everybody. Since that ended, Tech 3 cruisers have remained relatively expensive point-wise. They are very flexible, of course, but we don't see them super often. Why is that?
I think from the Tech 3 cruisers, the Loki is definitely the most valuable, the most viable in a tournament setup. I think the ranged webs just makes the game generally so much easier to play, and that's for sure one of the reasons a team will bring it in a shield rush, is it just gives you that extra sort of redundancy. Like if they have screening, you still have a really long 40-kilometer web to get on something, and it sort of works really well. I personally I'm not a fan of Lokis. I think in that comp, they cost too many points, but I think they're totally viable. I think some teams may prefer them. Maybe it's, they've run different numbers and come up with a different conclusion. I don't use them myself, but I think they're totally viable. And I think in that setup in particular, where you come up against Shield Rush versus Shield Rush, in terms of execution, it's quite an easy comp because you're basically both doing the same thing, right? You're just ramming onto whatever you want to kill and firing all your missiles and killing it as quickly as possible. But it's also kind of unforgiving because if you choose the wrong target, as No Vacancies did and DarkSide didn't, it snowballs against you very, very quickly.
Do you think, Moderator, the Novak could have done something different in that match? When they warped in and they saw what DarkSide had brought, the rages that they'd brought in, obviously they made a bunch of decisions, including primarying that Loki early on. Let's say Moderator is the captain of the Novak team. You warp in, you see this. What are you going to do?
If I'm the captain of the Novak team, I basically have two different things I'm going to assign. I'm going to tell my Spiteball and my Flycatcher and the Jackdaw, you've got three of those, very high damage T3Ds and then an Interdictor. You're going to get on top of the Scalpel and the Kieran, and you're just going to kill that. And then once that's done, either you're going to contribute to the fight or you're going to kill the Bifrost and you're going to get rid of the Lynx for the team, or you're going to have some of your guns on maybe even Logi drones. Maybe not so much in a shield rush, but just killing the using your low end to kill their low end provides so much value and utility. And we saw how much Rico Russ and Mr. Keps, the Scalpel and Kieran respectively on DarkSide, were able to do to keep that fleet cyclone up towards the end of the match.
Baza, Mod just started talking there about things like the low end and stuff like that. Kind of break down the concept of low end, top end, and how you would kind of put a comp together.
Well, I mean, obviously you've got 100 points to spend, right? And you've got certain limitations on what ships you can fly. You've got to fit within that 100 points. You can't have more than 4 of a ship hull, so you can't have 5 battleships. That would be illegal. So you need to sort of mix out the sizes of your ships that you're choosing to field and match at the same time. So you're going to, generally speaking, obviously battleships and bigger classes are going to be more DPS focused because they've got the big guns. They do more paper damage than expecting, your Tristan's going to be your damage. That's not going to work. So obviously you need to have a sort of mixed sort of setup of ships that work together in a comp. So you may have, heavy DPS. These are our Nighthawks and Cyclone fleets and stuff that's just going to get on the primary and go straight through it. And then you've got, you can't have a whole comp of that. So you say, what can deal with smaller stuff? We can bring a Spitball, we can bring a Flycatcher, we can get all these smaller missiles, and that more effectively deals with the enemy more ships.
Yeah, and then taking that, Mod, let's say you want to start, a team, how do you develop a comp from an idea? Do you just kind of pick a couple of ships that sound cool and make it up to 100 points, or is there a bit more, wrinkly brains behind it?
Yeah, so I'm sure that Basilisk will, tell me plenty about why bringing, four very cool Oneros to a match is not a good idea. Um, However, there are a couple ways to go about this. A lot of teams go off of, previous year's archetypes, and they see, okay, what worked in this year, and how have things changed from then till now, and continuing to use things that worked in the past. And if the rules haven't changed too significantly, then doing it again. Unfortunately, you've seen a lot of teams pretty early on in the feeders take comps from maybe 3 or 4 years ago and continuing to fly them and maybe not understanding why they worked then and the massive changes that have occurred to the game between then and now.
Yeah, and then you hear us talking a lot about things like archetypes and occasionally throwing out names like Fly Killer or Kingslayer. Of course, the infamous Octodad. Baza, what are some of the key archetypes that tend to get thrown around, especially when we're at this stage of the tournament? And as Mod says, a lot of teams will look at what was popular last year and how they can adjust it to this year.
Well, I mean, we've seen a fair few of them already. We've seen, as you said, the Octodad in the first couple of matches with all those battle cruisers and cruisers with medium guns. We just saw 2 shield rushes. I'm actually quite surprised it took until 7 matches into the feed rounds for the first shield rush to appear. We've obviously seen lots of double Lashaks. And if I was a sort of newer team coming into the tournament and trying to, get a grasp of, like I said at the top of the day, these teams are the first ones out this year. They've got to come up and show their presentation to the class before anyone else and get laughed at for what will turn out in hindsight to be, maybe a bad comp read, a bad meta read or something. So if I was them, I would try and choose something safe that they think is sort of versatile. You can fly it into a bunch of different matchups, and just be really confident and competent at that comp rather than trying to reinvent the wheel on your first time out. Like we saw it kind of go horribly wrong for Banana when they brought this 3 Scorpion, 2 Nexec, 2 Hecate comp, and it's not it.
Yeah, I've experienced that firsthand back in the day. I think it was Alliance Tournament 12 or 13. I was in the Bastards. I was one of the leaders of that team with Nash Cadaver and a couple of others. And I think the day before one of our first matches, we scrimmed Shadow Cartel, and they brought this thing we'd never seen before, a Bomber Tinker, and they just dominated us with it. And we were like, oh, heck, we didn't see that one coming. So we just immediately copied and pasted it. And then the next day flew it. I managed to win with it. So it's a case of look at what other people are doing, see what people are having success with, and try and figure out how best to use that. Some of the top end teams will start to then develop that or try and go crazy. But it's super easy to get yourself into this little PIFA theory crafting hole of doom where you come up with this thing that you think can be super good, and then in practice against your practice partners, perhaps it works, but against the rest of the wider world, you end up getting dunked on. Always entertaining, but it can be pretty easy to get stuck in that hole. Now, let's look forward to our next matches. So the first matches that we've seen thus far have all been round 1, win and in. If you won those matches, you are in the main tournament. Now we're looking at some matches from round 2. There are still round 1 matches to go. We'll see them tomorrow. But for now, we're moving on to round 2. So these are all teams that have lost a match. Now we're in an elimination match. So if you lose now, you're going home. If you win, you do not go home. You get to continue, but you do not get straight entry into the tournament anymore. So you have to win a couple of matches at this point forward to get into the tournament. But as I said, lose and you are done. So our first match in this bracket is going to be Snuffed Out versus Banana. So Snuffed Out dropped that match to Goonswarm Federation earlier on today. Banana losing to Platinum Sensitivity, and now they come up against each other. I'm looking at Twitch, and you guys clearly favor Snuffed Out. Over 1 million channel points to just 100,000 for Banana. So people definitely putting their money on Snuffed Out. Moderator, you have Snuffed Out in the fantasy league that we're running. What's your opinions on this match here?
I definitely did not draft Snuff. I drafted Basilisk's team, believing in him. However, I'm going to go with Snuffed simply because Banana brought probably one of the wonkiest, possibly one of the worst setups we've seen today with that triple Scorpion. I'm not sure what that was. Hopefully, they do that again so that Snuff gets to advance to the next round of feeders.
And Basilisk, do you echo that opinion? Oh, I see we have the bans actually. Let's take a quick look at them. So Snuffed Out banning Executor Navy issue and the Balgorn. Meanwhile, from Banana, we see the Barghest and the Blackbird. Baza, thoughts on these bans here?
I really like this from Banana. I think Banana have said, Snuff, maybe you didn't work in that first game, but you've got to bring something else now. So they're forcing Snuff to show something different, which maybe Banana themselves looked at that and thought, we don't know how we would deal with this. So they've just elected to ban it and say, Snuff, you got to choose something else. Snuff's bans are pretty generic. Exec Navy, Balgorn, I think that's pretty broadly applicable, pretty decent set of bans.
Yeah, the Executor Navy, a super powerful ship these days. It was kind of buffed just before Alliance Tournament last year, and it found its way very quickly into the meta. Powerful, tanky, fast. There's a lot of DPS. I expect we'll see that banned a lot. Obviously, in the feeders here, teams are limited to just 2 bans, which is much less than the main Alliance Tournament. And there's only 2 trickle bans, so a total of 4. It's definitely a lot lighter for theory crafting. It's harder to get yourself completely banned out of any comp that you're looking for, especially if you look towards the grand finals when you're talking about conquest ban systems with potentially 20 to 30 ships being banned out. It can be pretty phenomenal. We will, at the end of the feeders in the Galenti Gamble, the final matches will be a complete and utter pile of nonsense. It's going to be incredible. Galenti ships only. All normal points are still in effect, but there's no bans, no restrictions, just Galenti ships.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen there. I've absolutely no clue.
Nobody does. It's going to be absolutely crazy. But we can talk about that a little bit later because it is time to head over to the arena with our casters, Alec and Wiggenut, for Snuffed Out versus Banana.
Welcome. Snuffed Out with a rare command and control comp, double curse, triple command ship with a small logistics frigate core. Wingnut, what do we have on the Banana side?
They brought battleships. I'm sorry, I can't help it. They've got Scorp Navy and a Rattlesnake, and I believe they're both crews. I'm just double or triple checking, and yep, they're both cruise fits. We've got long range projection plus an Oracle trying to do more damage. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one. If that curse has brought missile guidance disruptors, these might have some trouble applying to literally anything. As the match is about to go underway.
Now, the curses are in an
Double
armor
curse.
comp, so I think it is quite likely that they're going to have that missile guidance disruptor, tracking disruptor mid slots. Question is, did they go all in on one or the other, or have they split the difference?
I suspect they probably split it, but still, I still have a potential for a lot of E-War. As the match has started now, we have to see where damage goes. First, getting shot as a character, which makes sense. That's probably would be my immediate first target because they are so low tank in comparison to everything around them. The SIG is massive, that they resist the crap. They are very easy to kill, and they're about 400 plus DPS of ship that you can kill like that. But it did not work yet.
Unfortunately, the curses are going to be a little bit tougher. You can see Jaza's curse drawing the initial fire, but they've already pulled drones back. Banana, I guess, changing their mind on this. Maybe they've decided to do some kind of micro jump play, but they have withdrawn all of their drones. Oh, they're getting shot. The drones are being shot. That is the issue.
Yeah, I think
now with their drones back in, we're kind of reset here.
They're not exactly willing to make the move just yet, but yeah, with the Confessor, Vengeance on the Snuff side, if they put out drones, they could be very easily killed. The Confessor is actually quite adept at just obliterating drones and sharpshooter. Now we wait.
You can see Banana being quite tentative here. Now, the longer this match goes, theoretically, Snuffed Out has the advantage. However, the newts have not come into play. The Banana team is outside of range of the curses, who are just very slowly inching their way forward here. The Snuffed Out team staying composed, staying tight into a ball, whereas the Banana team has spread itself out here. They're making feints here and there, but nothing is truly committing to this fight, and there's not much damage getting slung out in either direction.
Yeah, so normally these two cruise battleships could slowly, constantly project damage upon their enemies and just slowly nibble and nick things and start hurt them. But with the twin curses, it is kind of hard for them to actually make that work when they're being damped, or not damped, missile guidance to hell. Look at damage going into the Oracle now. They might start be going for the weaker ships around. That's not going to die.
Yep, and here we go. The Snuffed Out team is charging forward. They are committing to the Oracle, who is pulling range. However, the Scorpion Navy issue is tantalizingly close. They may decide to go with it just because it's at hand.
Now, the Oracle's right at the back. They're also, Snuff guys are going around at the moment, trying to get underneath, trying to get past these two battleships. So keeping an eye on them, see if they're going to try and keep themselves in front. Yep, the Scorp Navy of Marcellini? Ugh, can't say that. They're trying to currently intersect the Snuff fleet and stay in front of them. Because if these battleships can stay in front, Snuff team can't really get past to hit the weak stuff in the back.
Now, speaking of, they're attempting to make a play for the carries of James Enabler, but he is piloting well and avoiding most of the damage, only taking some light shots in shield as he had to turn around. But once his speed gets up, it doesn't look like stuff that will have the application to touch him unless the newts get on to turn that prop mod off.
So yeah, basically at the moment, I think the support wing of Bananas need to get around and get behind their battleships again, and pretty much force Snuff to keep burning around and chasing. You see the Oracle was in kind of a weird spot there. He was a little separated out, but he's burning back in there. Actually get Logian saved again, but at the moment, Bananas can't really make a hole, and Snuff is kind of slowly but surely pressuring him a little bit more and more. And all it takes is one mistake, and Snuff can kill a single ship and just leave this match and win. They got to be very careful.
Madonna is force feeding that Scorpion Navy issue into the Snuff team. He's making himself very available, but they're just not going for it.
Speaking of available, he just got tackled
now.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not really committing
and that's
to
a Vengeance
damage
tackling.
yet.
That is very hard to remove. Vengeance is one of the most annoying tackle ships around. You can't even nude it. It gets a cap bonus, a cap regen bonus. So it just sits there and keeps capping up in front of you.
This is huge. The Hyena is caught. Banana's Hyena is heavily caught. He's surrounded by a cloud of drones. He's just now managed to shake free and speed up. Oh, that was a very scary situation for that Hyena.
I don't know what he's
piloting rather erratically, turning back and forth.
Drones. I think he just got tagged by drones for a second. He slowed down for a little bit and just whap. And because there's nothing around him to tackle him. But meanwhile, the Caracal again being hurt. So at the moment, Snuff is really pressuring everyone. Meanwhile, at the moment, Bananas they've hurt a curse a little bit, but it's not moving. They've hurt a Vengeance, it's not moving. Eos not moving. They just can't really do anything. These cruise ships seem to be entirely neutered by the double curse comp.
And we're about to hit the 5-minute mark, the halfway point of this match, and finally
Look at the
we have
Caracal.
some newts applied to
No.
the Oracle.
There's a bunch of drones out there. Pop, Caracal's gone, and that, honestly, the way this is going, that's going to be it. Bananas need to make a move now. They got to find something they can grab it, and kill it as fast as humanly possible. But Snuff is not going to let that happen.
Definitely not. They're going for the Confessor here of Athena, but that is a tanky ship once it switches back into defense mode. Meanwhile, the Oracle has taken chunks now. It has got some newts on it. It's not going to be able to tank very effectively. And there it goes.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Here it comes. The Confessor is currently in sharpshooter mode, and he's still tanking quite comfortably. So that Confessor is not even being pressured at all. Cruise is not doing well, especially being potentially double guidance disrupted from both ships.
We're starting to see the application for Snuff really turning on now. They're starting to apply damage to these smaller targets more reliably as the Kirin of Dinox is taken down to 1/3 shield. And at this point, Banana's not really able to answer effectively.
Once the Hyena is gone for Bananas, there is no coming back. That's their only real application to help them with these cruise setups. That Hyena pops, they might as well just self-destruct the ships and go do something else for lunch because they've got no chance at that point. But it looks like at this point they're already kind of going that way. They can't really break anything. They're going for an absolution, and those are absurdly tanky. But when that's your best option,
it just gets worse for Banana here as the curses finally have their hooks into the logistics frigates, neutralizing their tanks and their ability to keep the other ships alive. The longer this match goes on, I said it at the top of this, at the start of this match, the longer it goes on, the more it is in favor of Snuffed Out's capacitor control setup. And they are sitting very comfortably now. They have fewer targets to have to worry about, and they're not able to put out enough damage to seriously threaten them, especially that Confessor. Outside of defense mode, probably one of their softer targets. If it's not being forced to switch back, they are absolutely in the driver's seat right now.
Exactly that. And the matches like this may be the perfect poster child for it, but this is why curses are so feared. one curse can control a match. Two curses, if flown right with good parts and good calling, can basically pull an entire team apart. These two battleships are worthless. Like, they could leave them alone. They don't care. These battleships can't do anything because these curses have guidance disrupted them to absolute hell and back. They haven't even killed the hyena yet. They've still got the target paintings from the hyena to try and apply to something, and they're still failing. Curses are
not even worried about that hyena. The damage is not snuffed out right now as the command ship Sleipnir brought down. That's the Lynx and a significant source of anti-cruiser damage gone from the Banana team. And they're just dropping left and right. The hyena has finally dropped. The Kirin and Scalpel are not able to effectively influence this match. If they get anywhere close to the fighting, they're neutered out immediately. And now we can see the Kirin starting to take a little bit of chip damage as the bulk of damage seems to be focused on this Raven Navy.
Yeah, might as well pick whatever you want at this point. But yeah, you can see like the Scorp Navy and Raven Navy have been shooting the entire time, by the way. Like, it may look like it, but they've been firing the entire match. There's just nothing they can do. Like, they can barely graze anything. You might as well just start shooting a big ship and pray, and even then, it's not really going to work with two curses ruining your day.
Yep, we're now about a minute and a half left. There is a very realistic chance this match goes to time, as the Snuffed Out team still has a pretty big pile of hit points to go through with the Raven Navy, and especially that Scorpion Navy, one of the more tankier battleships in the game with a strong resist bonus. But unfortunately, not an application bonus, so there's really not much they can do to answer back, as now their Scalpel, Paco Hemingway, takes absolute chunks out, and he just gets shredded. Oh, that was brutal.
Yep, let's watch the Bifrost go the exact same way. Then again, he is a far distance away. He kind of knows what's coming.
Like son, like father, like father, like son. Paco Jr. now going down. I assume he's dual boxing. Otherwise, that's just a very humorous coincidence. But Paco Jr. about to drop. That's the last of the Lynx here. Not that it's going to help them much. They will probably still have Lynx for the remainder of this match as we're ticking down close to 30 seconds remaining. Is it possible they'll get one of these battleships? They're sure going to try as they go after this Raven Navy issue. Taking it down to about 75% shields here. It is going down rather quickly, but they may have some local tank on it to keep it up as we're now ticking down very close to the end of the match. Nearly 15 seconds left.
He'll definitely survive. They don't have the DPS. This comp is not about damage, it's about full control, and they have managed that very, very well. That Raven Navy should, by all rights, unless it's some really weird fit, survive to the end. And there we go, 5 seconds left. He's going to make it. Bravo to Snuff. You've finally not been trash in a tournament. Woo! My pick.
Sending this one back to the desk for analysis.
Connected. Channel switched.
Well, it would have been a easy fight, right? But guess what, dude? I'm not seeing and people can't get their shit together!
Crush our enemies.
Your dams are completely damped out.
Crush. I'm damped out. Get on that campus, boys.
Eat your reps.
Yeah.
Everything damped.
I've not been able to look at a single thing all game.
I'm jammed.
Well, there you have it. Snuffed Out taking their first W in the tournament and moving on from round 2 into round 3. So they're one step closer to getting one of those remaining 4 places that do exist in the tournament. They didn't get in first time round. They lost to the Goonswarm Federation, but that was a commanding victory over the Banana team. It looked like perhaps even some dual boxing there from the Banana team, which honestly, love to see it. It's usually not a good idea in the Alliance Tournament, but I love the effort. And, you know, throwback to New Eden Open back in the day. Team Cube, one guy took 8 ships, multi-boxed all of them, got absolutely giga-dunked upon, and went out immediately. But, you know, big respect to the guy.
A true cautionary tale of woe.
Exactly. It's phenomenal effort, even if it resulted in absolutely nothing. Now, I have a question on that comp there, moderator, from the banana side. I mean, both sides at the start, actually. This is probably the same question, but what even is damage?
Damage is a state of being, a state of being that you are absolutely not in if you have two battleships that are being guidance disrupted down to under 30 kilometers and an oracle, shield oracle. We'll get to that later. But essentially, those two snuffed, those curses, excuse me, that's the word I'm looking for, completely shut down 60 points worth of utility at or the top end from that banana team, and then put pressure onto the Logi, who, despite being out of rep range from pretty much everything the entire time, couldn't have the capacitor to do anything anyway.
Yeah, we saw at the start both teams just kind of positioning around the arena, both sides declining the opportunity to head in and start trying to do damage. And the attack bars just right at zero. Neither team able to apply anything, both sides being controlled down. I was looking at that match, watching those two teams sort of move around each other, each trying to get into the optimal position before they commit. And I think I said, I was like, I could see this match ending when someone accidentally boundaries, and that's it. It was a cautionary tale of you need to be positioning, sure, but if you wait too long, especially against a team that has dual curses, then as the caster said during that match, the advantage for that team is just going to slowly creep up the longer and longer it goes. Baza, is there anything that Banana could have perhaps done differently based on what they had there?
Oh, that match was so disappointing for so many ways. I wanted to see Banana 1-0 and knock Snuff out. That would have been so funny. That would have been the most hilarious possible circumstance. So looking at the Banana comp, unfortunately, I mean, both teams fielded a very low DPS comp, I felt like. Snuff, we'll get to their comp later, but they spent 30 points on two curses, which together, sure, they bring a lot of newts and a lot of disruption, but between them, it's like 500 DPS maximum. It's really not a huge amount. Sure, it sort of amplifies what you've already got from turning off hardeners and reps and such, but not a huge fan of that personally. But looking at the banana comp, going back to that, is yeah, they didn't have the damage to really break through anything. It felt sort of a mismatch of it, where like you've got 10 shield ships, but there's no particular cohesive design behind all these 10 shield ships together, and that's one of the difficult things. I don't want to rain on their parade. Obviously, they're now out of the tournament. It's a sad day for them. But it is a high skill ceiling to sort of identify and learn how to build these comps, how to put things together organically, and that's why, as we were saying before the match, sometimes it may just be better to look at what's been reliable, what's been easy to fly, and what's worked in previous years, and try and build off that for a newer tournament, rather than trying to come up with something new and fresh that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Banana, unfortunately, they are the first team to drop out of the feeders this year. I think the Alliance Tournament is more approachable and more beginner friendly for teams than it has ever been, especially with these feeders taking place on Thunderdome. And I love to see teams who've maybe never competed before take that first step and compete. And I mean, let's be fair to Banana, they had a pretty rough ride. They came up against Platinum Sensitivity in their first round, a really solid team with experienced pilots, and then they came up against Snuffed Out, who are a team. And unfortunately, it just wasn't enough for them to be able to get through it in this stage. But Banana, I salute you. It was great to have you, and I hope we see you again next year. Plus Alliance logo. That would be super, super cool. Now let's look forward to our next matchup. It is Wormholer versus Wormholer, and that is Kitchen Sinkhole versus Wormageddon. Mark Resurrectus is absolutely beside himself with glee. Finally, the Wormholers will get a W. Now, I say this as a wormhole apologist. Like, I'm a big fan of most of these wormhole groups. I don't understand how it's just been so bad for wormholers this far. So, one way or another, a wormhole team will win this match, and I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. Of course, throwback to last year, Odin's Call wormhole group, second place in the Alliance Tournament, essentially kind of just stormed onto the scene. They'd been making moves for a while, I don't think anyone expected them to get second place though. So there is some solid talent in Wormholes. So never count them out, of course. Basilisk, what do you think about these bans here on the screen? Kitchen Sinkhole banning out Armageddon Navy issue and an Oneros, whereas Wormageddon banning out the Scimitar and the Blackbird.
Yeah, I think these are all 4 good bans. I think at this stage in the feeders, like I said earlier, when you've only got 2 bans, it can be very difficult to, specifically ban out a specific comp or a specific archetype that you don't want to see. And I think, in general, applying these sort of generalist bans that, maybe you don't want to see Tech 2 Logi Cruiser, so you don't want to see like an armor control kit set up. So you try and do 1 ban or 2 bans that deals with that Oneros, Armageddon Navy. It doesn't rule it out completely, but they're sort of broadly applicable in those types of comps. Same on the other side, Scimitar and Blackbird. They're just so versatile ships that it covers a lot of ground.
Well, do you agree with that? I mean, the Blackbird is. What do you think about that ban? ECM's a bit of a dice roll. Is it that strong that you want to ban it out with one of your 2 bans?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a generically good ban for the most part. It gets a little bit stronger when you have 3 bans, like Basilisk was saying, and you're like, okay, I can ban like Blackbird, Kitsune, and then force someone to bring Tech 1 Logi or force a commit to like a Rook. I'm sure we'll see plenty of that later in the AT, but for right now, a Blackbird is just, you get a lot of utility in terms of how many jams you get, how much power those jams have, or the amount of points they cost. So it's a fair ban.
Awesome. And then, of course, Basilisk, by banning out that Oneros, you still leave the Guardian. Is that a choice perhaps we might see here?
I think the Guardian is a totally legitimate choice, but obviously it has different strengths and weaknesses to the Oneros. It's got more repping power, but it might require you to sort of load up some Recebos, allocate a couple of mids elsewhere in the comp, excuse me, for like Recebos to try and buff up that Guardian, maybe cap transfers so you can try and chain up like with a Vexor or something. So I think, yeah, the Oneros is a good ban because it forces teams to sort of, if they want to run a comp with an Oneros, they may need to switch it up slightly if they want to run a Guardian in the same sort of fashion.
Awesome. Well, let's head over to the arena right now for Kitchen Sinkhole versus Wormageddon with Black Bart Pirate and Chad Flame.
Hello, this is Blackbird Pirate, joined by Chad Flame, and we are seeing Kitchen Sinkhole versus Wormageddon. Wormageddon doing an incredibly ballsy move and warping their entire fleet, sans their Logi to 0. They are bringing a variation of that heavy assault missile shield rush that we saw a little bit ago with DarkSide. Chad, what has Kitchen Sinkhole got?
Kitchen Sinkhole looks to have brought a Kingslayer setup with their 3 rapid heavy battleships, being 2 Typhoons and a Bargust, with some T2 frigate Logi, Curious for Dams, and Heretic Comet for tackle. This is going to be an interesting match. See who gets the lead first and how quickly Wormageddon can get in on Kitchen Sinkhole.
Well, it looks like it's actually going to be very quickly. The tackle from Wormageddon is actually already on top of Kitchen Sinkhole. They used a Crow, which is something we don't really see, but the Crow, Skybreaker, and Flycatcher have already gone in, and looks like they might have overshot their targets a little bit, so a little bit of a piloting fail there, but they are now grabbing some tackle. Lots of heavy assault or rapid heavy missile launcher damage coming out on that Fleet Cyclone of Ulrich, but the Typhoon is actually getting melted quite hard here too.
Yeah, bubbles were dropped on the Kitchen Sinkhole team a little bit closer to center arena, so Wormageddon's burning through their own bubbles right now. But you're also looking through the shield versus armor, and the shield is dying way quicker as we already see the Typhoon fleet or the Cyclone fleet about to go down, while the Typhoon fleet's only in half armor currently.
Yes, they also did lose a Crow there, and I think that Wormageddon might have actually sped in their ships away from the Osprey. The Osprey did actually come ramming in now, but now the Osprey is getting shot quite quickly. It got damped in, flew in too close, and the Osprey of Wormageddon is about to drop as well. So Kingslayer doing what it was good at, which is alphing logistics, and Barolt's Typhoon fleet issue is holding in about half armor. These are rapid heavy missile launcher battleships, so they should be hitting a reload here shortly, which will mean that Wormageddon will have a chance to kind of claw their way back into this, possibly.
Either going to have a chance to play catch-up here, with those reloads taking a good portion of time, so damage will probably fall off here momentarily. We might see this Flycatcher go down due to drones, but, it's all going to be if Wormageddon can get this Typhoon down quicker. It seems like they're struggling to get it down. So they might get it down, but by the time it's down, Kitchen Sinkhole is going to be shooting their rapid heavies again and just taking down ships at the speed of light that they were doing to start this match.
Indeed, and it does look like that reload has already happened. It's actually not as long as it feels like. The Fleet Typhoon did go down in the end, but they're taking out that Cyclone Fleet issue right now. Looks like Wormageddon has lost a significant portion of their DPS, and now Kitchen Sinkhole is being very smart, and they're wiping out that low end with those rapid heavies. They get them web scrammed, painted, all of those fun and exciting things. That Navy Osprey is almost dead here too, and I think Wormageddon is kind of just out of luck at this point. Surprising, interesting ways. We're seeing some big throwback comps. I think Moderator talked about it a little bit ago, where people are flying things from years past, but it seems to be working for Kitchen Sinkhole. We haven't really seen this specific setup be that successful in the past couple 8, but it's doing great against the shield setup.
Yeah, definitely noting as well that the Wormageddon team does not look like they got their tackle wing got in immediately, but all their small tackle ships died off fairly quick due to those rapid heavies. They're only holding a Bargus, so now after this Bargus dies, they're going to have to go play tackle on a Typhoon fleet, which is a very fast ship. So it's going to come down to piloting if they want to have a chance. But you're down to, by the time this Bargus dies, probably just a Nighthawk and a Caracal Navy, which are not going to be doing fairly well against fleet battleships.
That being said, if they do take this Bargast out before the Claymore drops, this could possibly still go in Wormageddon's favor, because once that Bargast goes down, there really is only 2 DPS ships left on the Kitchen Sinkhole side, which would be that Navy Executor and the other Fleet Typhoon. I don't think that the Claymore is going to survive, but it's entirely possible. Now that I said that, it looks like the Bargast remembered that it does, in fact, probably have an ancillary repper and has repped itself up full, with Tyrion Heki dropping quite quickly here and soon to be gone.
Yeah, that reactive definitely spooling up, being an armor ship, definitely a benefit over shield there. With 2 damage ships on grid, really, that reactive is going to spool in one direction. It's going to be way easier for that Bargast to catch reps, as it did. It doesn't look like they have the damage to take anything out on this grid anymore through these 2 powerful frigate Lodgies.
Yeah, it does seem that the frigate Lodgies survived, very, very well without having anything really messing with them. There's been EC drones on the Deacon for the entire time, but EC drones, sometimes they work great, sometimes they didn't. They didn't seem to work that great this time. The Nighthawk is dropping quite quickly here as well. We've seen Nighthawks just kind of popping. Usually they're super tanky ships, but it does look like Kitchen Sinkhole is going to completely clean this up, only losing a single Fleet Typhoon, and the lone Skybreaker, Mr. Frosty, is flying around, maybe prolonging the match a little bit, trying to get a little bit more screen time. Who knows?
Yep. That was definitely a for how much of a rush that was. I'm shocked that the match did not go quicker, in a sense that we are currently just past the halfway mark. Seems like Shield rush comps are not getting stuff down as quick as they thought they would.
No, not really. And it does look like Mr. Frosty is actually going to attempt to do the boundary, but I think they actually overshot the MJD beacon and were not able to activate in time. So it's likely that all these little drones are going to catch up and blow them up before they were able to actually get their MJD off. Too bad. Obviously, people always try and go for the boundary record. They are actually MJDing back into the blob of people. So, trying to get their moment in the sun as much as possible here. Also, huge shout out to the new missile effects. They're not all that new, but we're getting really, really good footage of them, and they look super amazing. So good job, CCP art team. You're always knocking it out of the box for, almost 2 decades now.
Yeah, also shout out to that camera crew, getting some nice shots of that as well.
Yep. And with that, we are
And
going
that
to
will
send
be
it back to the desk.
Kitchen Sinkhole there, taking the W, representing W Space as they knock Wormageddon out of Alliance Tournament 19 contention. They're our second team that we say goodbye. Actually, that's not true. Two teams did indeed pull out. So these are our third and fourth teams that have gone out. So no, you weren't the first to go out. Banana, I apologize. You were in fact the third. But yeah, Kitchen Sinkhole with a pretty solid victory there. It looked like it was a bit of back and forward at the start. We saw a nice dive in from a Crow, which like we say, we don't see very often, and a Skybreaker, also a very uncommon ship. The Basilisk, why might you bring a Skybreaker to an Alliance Tournament match?
So the Skybreakers, I think it actually should be more common than it is. I think it's a very, very good ship. For the 2 points, you can zap rep bots. You can have it as a shield-heavy tackler. You can load up the mids. You can fit it armor and load up the mids with like target painters, recebos. It's really, really cheap for the value it gets. And I think in this match, they may have just wanted to use it as a heavy tackle along the Crow, just ram in, scram web, extender, and just hold something down and wait for everything else to get there. Any rep bots it can zap in the meantime is like an added bonus, but I think they wanted to use it as like a 2-point tackler.
And Mod, we saw them burning in to get that tackle, and it looked like, at least according to the casters, that they'd overshot, and that was called out as some poor piloting. Explain to me what's happening here when these guys are burning in and they're trying to get tackle.
Yeah, so sometimes the teams that are a little bit less experienced, a little less practiced, will they'll overheat their micro warp drive. They'll hit approach and they'll just zoom right on past as their micro warp drive taking them at many 1,000 meters a second. If you're in a Crow, you'll just zoom past and you won't stay on top of the target that you wanted. So we did see that happen. Kind of commentary that we heard from the match being that the Crow is an uncommon pick. It seems like more recently in the 3-point slot, we've seen a lot more of kind of these Tech 1 E-War frigates like a Crucifier. What do you think of that, Baza?
Yeah, I really like the Crucifier, but obviously not in a shield comp. I think in a shield comp you can't keep it alive and it doesn't do enough to justify the points. But the carries, for example, Maulus, sorry, I think that's totally viable. Or like Imicus Navy, even something like that, where you can also just get cheap mid slots, can be very valuable, and depending on the comp.
Awesome. Then one of the other things that we saw deployed in that match, something that it's still relatively new in the grand scheme of EVE Online compared to, obviously it's been around for 20 years now, but especially uncommon in the tournaments is the use of the web bubbles or the wobbles. Baza, talk to me about them. Like, why would you maybe use them? What are they in the first place?
Okay, so the web bubbles are like a module that you can fit to the interdictors. So the interdictors, for a long time, were only able to use regular warp disruption bubbles that you see spammed everywhere in nullsec. But then recently, a couple of years ago, CCP added these web bubbles. So you launch a web bubble from your interdictor and it pops out a little charge and it webs everything around you within, I think it's like 10 or 15 kilometers for 30 seconds. Sounds pretty cool, to be honest. And I think before release, people were like, yeah, this could be interesting. This could have some uses. You can suicide in an interdictor or just glide in and, hope to get some webs on multiple targets at once, and it lets everything else come in. But I think sort of in practice, it's proved a little bit less than successful because the hulls it fits on aren't actually that tanky. Like the Heretic and the Flycatcher get HP bonuses, but they don't hold that well under reps. They're not that small. And when they launch their web bubble, they web themselves, so they very frequently just die.
Awesome. And then one other just interesting little tidbit that I've noticed while I was looking through the matches for today is that between Team Red and Team Blue, it is 7-2 to Team Red, I believe. So that's pretty strong. It turns out it pays to be red, and that's somewhat. I mean, obviously, this means literally nothing. It's just the order they have been put in based on some marbles. But I choose to believe that it means something, and I'm going to read heavily into that. So, referring to that, looking at our next matchup, is the Initiative versus Sugar. Now, the statistics of the colors say that the Initiative, being in red in this upcoming match, have a higher chance of winning. Moderator, is this how statistics work?
I would say that a couple years of stats class in college would say no, that is not how they work. but you know, I'm not going to argue with the current results. In all seriousness, Initiative and Sugar should be definitely an interesting matchup. Initiative having lost their first matchup to Paper Numbers earlier today, and they brought, I believe, a pair of Leshaks.
Yeah, that was Leshak, double Leshak versus double Leshak. Not the most common ship at that point we had been thinking, and then suddenly we'd seen a couple of double Leshak comps. Baza, do you think maybe Initiative, are they going to bring those double Leshaks again? If you're Sugar, are you going to try and ban to try and stop that, or are you going to allow them to bring it and try and bring something to counter it?
I hope Initiative don't bring the double Leshak. I think it's like 1 and 4 today, and the one win it did have was also against double Leshak. So I hope Initiative have more in the bank, and that's not their only comp. I think just what we've seen the last couple of matches has been more reliable comps. I think in the knockout phases, when teams are backs against the wall, they win or they're out. They're sort of feeling the pressure, and they're opting to go for these easy to execute comps like the Shield Rush that we've seen a couple of times now.
Yeah, let's take a look at the bans for this upcoming match between the Initiative and Sugar. So the Initiative banning out the Balgorn and the Blackbird. Meanwhile, Sugar banning out the Barghest and the Balgorn. Lots of B-based bans right now. Of course, both sides banning out the Balgorns, meaning that we have some trickle bans, which give us the Oneros and the Celestis. Moderator, any thoughts on the banning here? Obviously, Blackbird, as you said last time, a solid standard ban. I feel like the Balgorn is kind of up there with one of those as well, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think these bans are pretty based. Both teams realizing that they absolutely do not want to get range controlled or jammed or damped. And Neros being kind of, the more consistent, I don't want to see armor. Not wanting to see, Balgorn, obviously armor kind of only. Barghest can be either armor or shield. So, kind of forcing the other team out of certain different archetypes.
Awesome. Baza, do you have anything to add to those thoughts there on the bans?
Yeah, so I really like the Balgorn ban. I think, like I was saying before, when it comes down to this situation where teams are sort of up against the wall and they need to do something that's perhaps easier to execute than what they've tried before, I think having a Balgorn or coming up against a Balgorn makes it a lot more difficult, because I think the ranged webs that the Balgorn gives you that you can't quickly take off the field like you can for, say, a Hyena can make the game just a lot easier to play for the team that's fielding it, because you've just got this air of control. You've got this zone of control of like 40, 50 kilometers around that Balgorn. And when something gets in that range, you feel like you're ahead. You feel like you're pushing forward and making progress. So it's good if you don't want to see that, to make their life more difficult for your opponents by getting rid of it.
And Maud, I want to take you on a trip down memory lane to one of the old Alliance tournaments. I believe one of the ones that you might have been casting when the Celestis was super popular, because you could just bring anything and you could slap as many damps and everything as possible, and every single match was just how many Celestises can we bring. Since then, they were pretty heavily nerfed in terms of tournament rules. We don't see them very often, yet a Celestis ban here. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so at the time when they were used a lot more heavily, I believe that basically a lot of that was a function of the format being what it was. There used to be 12 players on an Alliance tournament team, which opened up the points to be a little bit different, which is why they were good, maybe 5, 10 plus years back. But nowadays it can be more economical to bring, say, a Maulus for less points and some number of mids. But Celestis is very much like I'm committing to an armor comp, whereas some of the other options can be shield or armor.
Cool. So this should certainly be an interesting one, and this will be our last match of the day. So let's take a quick moment to just look back at the matches that we've seen thus far. So in the first round, we saw Goonswarm Federation go up against Snuffed Out and take that win, securing themselves a spot in the main tournament. Also securing spots in the main tournament were Platinum Sensitivity defeating Banana, Brave Collective defeating Kitchen Sinkhole, the Ancients defeating Wormageddon, Paper Numbers defeating the Initiative, and Deepwater Hooligans defeating Sugar. We took a break, we came back, and then we saw DarkSide also get themselves the final spot from today in the main tournament when they beat Novak. Then we went on to the round 2. Matches were elimination matches. If you lose these, you are out. You are donezoed. And we saw Snuffed out, knock Banana out of the tournament. We saw Kitchen Sinkhole snatch the win off of Wormageddon. And now we're about to go into the Initiative versus Sugar. So again, this is an elimination match. If the Initiative can win here, they can survive another day. They can bring more double the shack comps if they choose. But if they lose, they are going home. And considering they've just knocked over the Tranquility Trading Tower and they've left the Imperium, I don't know what else they have to do. So they should probably try and focus on at least getting into the tournament. Otherwise, they're going to get a little bit bored. Now, we can go to the arena for our final match of the day with Alec and Wingnut as we go for the Initiative versus Sugar.
G'day there, mates. Welcome back to the arena, and we have, well, a very aggressive comp versus what looks more like a ratting adventure, but I think it's a drone comp. What are you thinking, Alec?
Yeah, that is a Tech 2 drone comp. Haven't seen this today. We've got a triple Ishtar core with double EOS. A lot of wasted points there, but a lot of firepower as well, and a lot of toughness. Up against what looks to be a missile rush.
With a little bit of extra like a
That's going to be
Sleipnir
a
as well, but
tricky
yeah,
one.
very built rush thing. But yeah, triple Ishtar. Are we going ratting today? Is that what's going on? People have come to the wrong place. This is not a haven, guys.
Initiative might have been confused. They just thought that they were seeing a ratting fleet out there. They're charging forward. Questionable decision, perhaps, as they're charging right into a big pile of sentry drones with very low transversal. Let's see if Sugar can take advantage.
Oof.
They lose one of
Carrie's
their
got
carries
immediately
straight away, but are they going to trade it for a Kieran? And they do.
Immediately gone. A bunch of E-War drones as well, but yeah, this is a very weird one. Big old ball of sentries at the moment.
And here's where the sentry drone call is going to really take things into a different direction. Right now, the Initiative is on top of those sentry drones. Sentry drones do not track very well. They are stationary drones. They have great alpha and good range, but not great tracking. They're having trouble applying to anything but the Nighthawk here. That said, that Nighthawk is taking a tremendous amount of fire. They're going to trade it for one of the Thalias, but if they can get that Nighthawk down, that's not a bad trade.
Interesting as well. I'm looking at the fleets at the moment. There's an EOS of Syed Korova. He's right next to an MJD beacon. Are they going to try the whole MJD and bounce around while your sentries engage things? It looks like at the moment that is not really the plan.
They absolutely
but
should.
Let's set it up. Oh yeah, we've seen that back in, I think it was like Anger Games last year or the year before.
The more spread out this drone comp can be, the more spread
bingo.
out this drone
Trojan
comp can be, the more time they're going to be able to buy themselves for those drones to apply.
He's burnt past that, and he's now... Hold on. Syed, turn. Syed Korova, turn.
Oh no. Oh no, he's approaching the edge of glory.
Syed.
Left.
It's a slow car wreck. We can't stop it. It's a car wreck in slow motion. Oh wait,
this will be terrible.
Oh,
this will be terrible for Sugar.
Oh man, he stayed. Okay.
Oh wow. Tempting fate there as the rest of their team falls apart while we've been watching that. The Russian Terminator Ishtar is practically dead.
I'm sorry, I'm just dying from trying not to cough here, but it's the guy was just going in a straight line. Meanwhile, his entire fleet is dying, but man, he almost made it worse.
They're looking to trade for Zethurian's Orthrus here, which is going to take a big pile of damage off of the field for Initiative, but it's not going to be enough. They're going to lose Lanceseeker's Ishtar for this, and they're just not able to take down these Initiative ships quickly enough. I think they may have lost a critical mass of damage here.
Yes, and
well, that said, there might be a reload here because Lanceseeker is pulling hit points back.
Yeah, they could be so much further away with these ships, but they're just a little bit too close together. Like, you're in a drone comp, you could just scatter to the four winds and just make it really hard for them to engage you at all. Their sentries can engage at ridiculous distances. Fish. I think
Yeah,
that
they're
style
having
will
trouble
slowly
with
go
that.
down.
However, the Heretic does have that Osprey Navy well tackled, and he's paying for it now. Deep into shields here. They'll probably kill him even after this Heretic goes down, as the armor gets torn away from that Osprey Navy. Doesn't have much of it to speak of, and even less hull. It's now bleeding into that hull, nearly down.
He's in the perfect range too.
And there he goes.
He was in perfect range of Sentry Drone application. He was being held down as well. That was honestly perfection. It's just a shame it happened a little late. Could have really changed this matchup a lot earlier.
Well, now we're starting to get into pretty deep water here, and you have to consider that these EOSs are extremely, extremely tanky. There are command ships that are fully capable of applying their own damage and repairing quite a bit of an enemy fleet. It's possible. It is possible. They get initiative below the point where they cannot actually break the tank on these EOSs. If that happens,
definitely a
Sugar
chance.
might be able to grind themselves out of victory here.
I also like that what you described there, very tanky, able to do damage themselves. That also explains the Sleptr on the opposing side. But very similar ship in terms of ability to fight on its own, basically, with no support. It looks like it is now being
but
shut
with
up
one
by
key
the
difference. That Slefner tank has a time limit on it. That ancillary
Oh, yeah.
shield booster has already been running. It's now quite a few cap charges deep. But it looks like they're switching off of him in favor of going for that Loki. That'll give him time to reload. Questionable target call here from Sugar. They must be unable to apply their damage in a way that they're happy with.
And the fun thing here as well, right, you've got two Sipples. You could use them to engage the Elses. You could also theoretically go to the ball of drones and just start obliterating Sentry drones. It's probably not worth it, but the option is actually there for this comp at this point. And
Why shoot the drones when the home ship is dropping that quickly? The EOS not
very
tanking like
true,
you'd
very,
expect.
very true. That's just not.
Must
that's
be
not as tanky as we
aiming
all
heavy on the
expected.
damage mods for these EOS. They are not able to last here. Maybe single repper.
I was going to question the choice of using nothing but ECM drones in all of their ships. Like, all I can see is ECM drones from Initiative, but hey, I can't argue with it if it worked,
Cannot argue with success, and they're definitely having it here. This EOS is taking a pounding, not able to claw back the armor. It does have bonus repairs, but not really coming into play. And looking at that local rep bar that you can see on your screen there, the small sliver of purple, that should be bigger for an EOS. It's possible it's got a one repper set up. It's possible that it
And still
it's
repper, I
traded a
think.
lot of low slots for damage, and now it can't keep itself up.
My bet that is an Ensil Repper that has run out of charges. But pop, there he goes. Well done to
there she
Initiative.
goes.
Very
Congratulations,
aggressive play,
Initiative.
very well flown. Alright, and we'll go back to the studio, see what they think. Bye-bye.
Rain, are you in an armor vagabond or something?
No, I've got XLSP.
And polarized guns or what?
Kasich, you are one of two people that couldn't listen and couldn't check bookmarks and find your own way out. The entire route was literally bookmarked out to Losec. I bookmarked it 10 minutes in advance!
Guys, stop being casual. They're really bad. We should not lose anybody to this. Warp off. Warp off. Take the fleet warp. Everybody warp off. This is really, really bad execution. I'm very disappointed.
Initiative there with that win over Sugar to move on into the next round of the tournament. So we say goodbye to Sugar. I guess you could consider this now a diet AT, as it's sugar free, but that is it for them. Interesting comps. Obviously, they went for 9 men, so I assume they maybe had a bit of an issue fielding 10th. Maybe they didn't have a person. And props to them if that's the case for still, making a match and turning up with 9 rather than just throwing in the flag. If it was designed to be 9, then I have questions. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about, just for educational purposes, is one of the rules that we have in the Alliance Tournament for the last couple of years, which is the points inflation. So that is, if you bring multiple ships, then every time you bring a copy of that ship, the point for both of them goes up by 1. So we saw there Sugar brought 3 Ishtars. So I believe they go from, I think it's 11 up to 14 points each, which would then be 42 points. And then 2 EOSs, which would go up from 18 to 19 points each, and that's 38 points. And if my maths are correct, I believe that's 8 points lost to point inflation, which could be pretty brutal. Baza, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so firstly, just on the 9-man fleet thing, I mean, yeah, I think it's quite likely they had an issue. I think generally, as you said, it's pretty ill-advised to field a comp with 9 people. So, I mean, yeah, props to them for showing up and having a go. Regarding point inflation, yeah, so the rule is every copy that you fly increases the cost by 1 for both of them. But the way I think about it, this is like a PSA for everyone who's watching all the way to the end, is think about it as if it's increasing the one that you're adding by 2. So 1 Ishtar is 12 points, and 2 Ishtars is 13 points, right? But the way I think about it is 1 Ishtar is 12 points, and then that second Ishtar is 14 points. And then if you add a third one, that third Ishtar is effectively 16 points. Now, do you really want to spend 16 points on an Ishtar? I think that's probably an ill-advised decision, because at a base level, the game comes down to the point values, right? You've got 100 points to spend. If you're spending them all on ships that aren't worth it, your comp's just not going to be as good. I think there are some scenarios where it's worth to do it. I think if the ship is exceptionally good value for the points, that's a great idea. For example, the Exec Navy, 6 points this year, 7 points normally, 6 points with the Glente point reduction, 2 of them for 14 points. That sounds great. They pump loads of damage. They're pretty tanky. They're really fast. They're a really good ship. But 3 of them, it's a bit questionable. I'd generally advise against going 3 of anything, I think.
Thank you. I feel enlightened thanks to Professor Basilisk there and his math lecture. Now, that was our last match of the day, the initiative taking that W and moving forward. We will be back tomorrow at 1700 for our first match of tomorrow, which is still going to be in the first bracket. I believe it's winner of match 9 versus winner of match 10, which, if I quickly look at the schedule, means that we are going to see Kitchen Sinkhole go up against the initiative tomorrow at 1700. Make sure you join then. So many more exciting matches. We're going to see some interesting teams. We're going to see Test Alliance, Please Ignore. That's right, they still exist, and they're going to go up against Barcode. We're going to see Rusty Hyenas, a team that's come through some of the lower tournaments and always been quite interesting to watch. Templars Calcif, I'm looking forward to see them. They've been a bit of a dark horse for a couple of years. Is this their year finally in the Alliance Tournament? We're going to see Exodus, a story team with a great history. I'm looking forward to seeing them as well. So plenty of great matches tomorrow. We start around 1700. Make sure you tune in then. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
See you tomorrow.